do I? This is Monica Perez here with Courtenay Turner. And I have to say, she is the brain that never stops thinking. I can't believe that she said something that caught my ear. And it's like, let's talk about that. And of course, there's just volumes behind it, dovetails into what she's working on right now. Now I wish I had another week to prepare, but we're going to just do this in real time. She's going to explain it to me like I don't know what she's talking about because I don't. And you might not either. So hello, Courtenay, and thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited for today.
Hello. I'm excited to be here as well. Good to see you.
We were on the Union of the Unwanted, like maybe 1 month ago, I don't know. And you just nailed something that I just never really understood. So my education, normally I think you can learn everything on your own and you absolutely can, but it can be helpful to learn things in a systematic way, in a framework and everything. So I was an economics undergrad, and it was kind of the opposite of what I need to understand what you were saying. And what you were saying was something like libertarianism is contractual and doesn't have an ontology. And I was just like, I think that explains a lot, but first I have to understand what it is she's saying. And I guess I just I have a lot to weave into the conversation to elucidate the things that I think other libertarians might also need help with. But would you mind just kind of unpacking that a little bit? Like, what is ontology? What are examples of it? Why isn't libertarianism it? Like, explain. And then I realized where it went with the Yarvin stuff and the book that you're writing right now. Like, it was really nuts. So I'm guessing that you were really thinking through it, and that's why it came out in our conversation. But so just start with 101, and we're going to go from there.
All right. Well, ontology. So ontology has shifted in language definitely over the past, like I would argue, millennia. So a lot of times people in our more modern framework think of ontology in a very phenomenological kind of a sense. So phenomenology, like Heidegger, Husserl and Heidegger are two philosophers who talk a lot.
What is phenomenology? Stuff happens?
Yeah. So it's something that happens, but it's from your subjective experience. It's a more psychological kind of a description. So they talk about ontology from the person, right? Dasein, being in the world. So as opposed to ontology in a metaphysical sense, where when I'm talking about ontology, I'm talking about in the Aristotelian concept of ontology. So this comes from very specific metaphysics, which stipulates that we have that there is a creator. Aristotle called it the unmoved mover, but
yes, prime mover, unmoved. I love that one.
Unmoved mover. But through the line of Maimonides, who was a Jewish philosopher, and then Father Albert Magnus, who trained Aquinas, then we get this lineage of creating this kind of Aristotelian framework in the Judeo-Christian framework. You adopt this, so it's because he was coming from the Greek tradition, more of a pagan. Although I would argue that he wasn't really a traditional pagan, because he talked about the unmoved mover.
Who wasn't a pagan?
Aristotle. So I know he comes from that world, right? So,
right.
But my argument is that he's talking about a very specific creator-creation distinction, which was very unusual for his time, right? In his time, you had all these different gods, and they all have like their role and their, it was kind of a collaborative, and they were very human-like. These gods, the Greek gods, the Greek mythology, which I was very much into as a little kid. I don't know why, but I think just because they were so human, and I just loved the stories.
See, I thought it was totally implausible. It's like these people
Oh,
are
to me,
God is
I didn't
perfect.
think about it in terms of it being realistic. It was kind of like Aesop's fables to me, but I found them much more interesting because they were so human and it's so passionate and like, and it was like kind of a removed mythical, fantastical version of what happened. I don't know. To me, it was kind of like soap operas.
Yeah, no, I totally think it was there to explain all emotion and psyche, and it's almost like a precursor to Shakespeare. I feel like
Yes,
Shakespeare serves the same purpose.
very much so. Very much. I totally agree. So as a
Yeah.
little kid, I was like riveted, which led me into Greek philosophy at a very young age because I had a little bit of the foundation because I had read Greek mythology when I was, and I'm talking really young, like when kids are reading Aesop's Fable, I was interested in Greek mythology for whatever reason.
Right.
Maybe because I saw Xanadu and it was one of my favorite movies as a little kid. I
Well,
don't
and
know.
your parents probably gave you access to the things that you were interested in.
Yes,
So you
they
could
did.
just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents found me very annoying because I was always asking them questions, so they would just shove a lot of books at me and be like,
Yeah, that's awesome.
"You can answer, but you can read about it."
One
So
of my 8 older brothers and sisters had not already had an interest in it. I wasn't, whether it was a pair of pants or a book, like I wasn't getting a fresh one.
right, yeah. So yeah, so he had this concept, and then through Maimonides to Father Albert Magnus, and then Aquinas, we get this more Judeo-Christian biblical framework that through Aristotle. They Judeo-Christianized it. I mean, Maimonides was Jewish, and then the others were Christian.
What day? Give me dates here because I had this, and I've been wanting to ask you this question. I wonder if I shot you this question in advance. I think I might have. That it's been like the church has been criticized for transitioning from Plato to Aristotle, like after the Middle Ages, like the Platonic model was really what was happening when you had cloisters and monasteries and stuff where they would take the smartest kids out of the families, bring them into the monastery. They'd live in a community. Those were the philosopher kings, or really the philosopher priests, that kind of a thing where they gave as they could and took what they, like there was a Platonism in it. And then in order to justify like the economic changes, the Catholic Church, for example, kind of like put their stamp on Aristotle, and that was that. Does it sound like I just made that up? Because I might have.
No, well,
Just made
yes and no. So I definitely, Aristotle was a check to Plato's dialectic. And he very much was, he's a counter to the Neoplatonic tradition, which was later, right? But in terms of timelines, you have who synthesized Aristotle with Neoplatonism would be Augustine.
Oh,
yeah.
same
So he kind of smuggled in the Neoplatonic tradition into, and fused it with the Aristotelian vernacular, but it wasn't true Aristotelian metaphysics. He was taking in some of that Neoplatonic metaphysics, whereas Aquinas was very true to Aristotelian metaphysics, but he theologized it. So he put it into a Christian framework. And as far as the economic aspect, that I'm not sure. I can't really speak to that. I don't have enough of the historical context on that. But I know there's a lot of criticism of the scholastics, but mostly it's the later scholastics. Aquinas would be an earlier scholastic. He's like like mid 1200s, so like 13th century, where the later scholastics did kind of reduce Aristotle, and that was more of a Jesuit influence.
right. Okay.
Yeah. So that might have to do with the economic. I'm just not sure. I can't speak to all the historical details. I don't have that framework. I haven't read enough on that, but he very much theologized. So he's now taking the concept of unmoved mover and making it's about God.
It's funny because all of those names, Albertus Magnus, St. Augustine, and Thomas Aquinas, are the names of all the schools. So
Yes.
when I was growing up, all like the high schools and stuff, or even the colleges of the super Catholic, were those names. Churches are other things.
Sure.
But the school, I'm like, oh, that was that school. That was that school. That was that school. So obviously, it's the intellectual academic foundations of Catholicism for starters.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. And that's traditional Catholicism, not
Right.
like the
Tell me
liberation
about it.
theology kind of stuff that we see more now. This is tradition. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I don't have to tell you.
Please. Yeah.
But
Even
I'm
the stuff that people are going with traditional today is like gone too far. Like it
well, that's
isn't
like
even
reactionary. It's not traditional. It's reactionary. They're
right.
calling it traditional, but it's not traditional. It's
No,
reactionary.
I mean, some of them aren't even going to church. And I don't know if you understand Catholicism, but you go to hell if you don't go to church. Like you're not, you don't decide if the priest is good enough, and he doesn't decide if you're good enough. You know, it's not like YouTube where you guys decide, well, I don't like that commercial, or that commercial doesn't like me. You don't, that is not your job. If you want to go get the sacraments, you're required to do it. They give it to you. They are, even if they're bad popes, a bad priest, anybody, if they're ordained. So there's something that's gone too far. And I smell a rat when all these cultural change agents convert to Catholicism. I mean, it's very hard to really to use a word that I really hate got appropriated by Elon Musk. It's really grok Catholicism. It's not it's not like switching political parties.
Yeah. No, there's so much infiltration and subversion, and
Yes.
change agents, and it's not just Catholicism. I mean, it's everywhere, unfortunately. But yeah, so back to the concept of ontology. So Aristotle had this concept of eudaimonia, that humans are wired for virtue. So human flourishing is wired towards virtue.
Oh, who said this? Aristotle?
That's Aristotle's concept, and that's actually
how do you spell that?
Eudaimonia is
EU. Got it.
Yeah, EUDAIMO, and yeah.
Okay, I dropped out of a public high school, so I'm missing entire lobes of my brain that should have been developed in that. Were instead
I missed most of elementary school because I went to it was a very small school, but it was Montessori style.
Oh, yeah.
They you go at your own pace.
But I put you in the corner with the Greek mythology, and they found you 4 years later.
I finished the 6th grade math textbook, and the school didn't go beyond 6th grade, but I finished it in October of 3rd grade. So they just didn't give me anything.
I totally believe that. Yeah.
I was like, so I'm just going to sit in a corner and read. And they were like, yeah, just go to the library. And so, so there's a lot I didn't learn in the process, and that's all that to say. But so I can relate to that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm not going to ask you about whatever chemistry, and
there are a lot of gaps I missed, but
I guess they didn't teach you chemistry in 4th grade. But yeah, so don't expect you to know about.
I learned a decent amount. I took chemistry over the summer. I took like organic chemistry because I had missed. So yeah,
wow.
I was like, I want to take it, and I really liked it because it was almost like puzzles. A lot of people think of it, but it's right. It's kind of like puzzles. It's like, oh, this is kind of like puzzle. Yeah. So he had this concept of eudaimonia, which is where in the Declaration we get this pursuit of happiness. And so, in the Virginia Declaration, it was life, liberty, and property. Those are the inalienable rights. And George Mason was very influential on Jefferson writing this Declaration of Independence. And George Mason was an Aristotelian. And he was the one who shortened. Jefferson had and Jefferson was very upset that he shortened it. He took out the property part, which was a longer part that talked about human, pursuit of happiness and property. And there was something else. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it.
I kind of wish they left the property in.
So, but it was under the Aristotelian framework, that's implied because you have
it's all implied. I know. People say that about the entire Bill of Rights, like, oh, it's implied. It's like, no.
Well, it's a problem when you get to the Constitution because they've dropped the metaphysics because at the time, Jefferson said that it is for a moral and educated citizenry. But that
was Jefferson, not Adams?
They both said it.
Okay, got it.
They both said it. And so now when you shift and you no longer have that educated citizenry. And when they were talking about education at the time, they were talking about this moral metaphysical framework. They were not talking about learning, your mathematics, your math timetables. And, that's important to understand. But that's not really what they were talking about when they were saying, because civic virtue is downstream from the metaphysical framework.
Right. The liberal arts were for free men. the liberal arts, and now we have STEM, which negates the liberal arts.
It does.
And so like Dewey and all that stuff, but that's post 1900s.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and I would argue it actually there was in
Before
the
that.
1800s. Yeah. But yes, definitely Dewey was a huge inflection point and definitely made things way worse. So he had this concept of eudaimonia, and he had, there's several concepts, his four causes, but this concept of ontology for Aristotle is this notion that we are teleologically wired. We are not just being in the world, as like Heidegger would say. We are, and we don't just make up our own purpose. We are actually here with a purpose. And that purpose is actually wired towards virtue, that we are rational beings. That is why we are endowed with free will. The whole gift of free will is not because we are these Hobbesian brutes and we're just, selfish, brutal creatures. We are actually wired for virtue, for morality. That's the whole purpose.
Yeah. So
we miss the mark. That's to sin, right? We are fallible. We will miss the mark, but we are not wired just for selfish, brutish behavior.
So I heard somebody say, I'm not going to name names because it was such a bad thing to say. Back around 9/11, those guys might be in heaven because they thought they were doing good, right? They thought they were doing good, and I'm like, that can't be right. So I thought about it, and I'm sure it was kicking around in my brain from my education, but I didn't remember in the front of my mind like this list. But I thought, God had to have given us three things in order to be responsible to not do stuff like that, and then be held accountable if you do stuff like that. And those three things, and the argument was, well, they weren't Christians, so they didn't know better. So my counter argument, which I think will agree with, God had to have given you three things to have you accountable and responsible for your behavior. It had to be understand the difference between right and wrong, have reason, and free will. So you have to understand it. You have to be able to process it, apply it, and have the judgment. And this is rooted in Catholicism. Like, you can't be responsible for going to hell for mortal sin if you were under duress or if you didn't understand it or whatever. Like, you have to have those things, but you're capable of it. You're required to inform and follow, reform, educate your conscience. Yeah. And you have one, and it's that, and everybody has
it. Yeah.
Say it again.
Right reason. Right reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's self-evident. My point of that story is that it is self-evident and necessary.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And this does come. So I was looking up what the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and attaining happiness and safety. That was Jefferson's original line. And it was George Mason who changed it to pursuit of happiness. Because it was a broader concept. And the idea of property really is more of a Lockean contractarian.
Okay.
Yes.
It's better.
What?
Because you have the right. It's better to say the pursuit of happiness because you have a right that's broader. And this really goes to what I wanted to talk to you about. It's broader than just the black and white of ownership. Like Rothbard says, there's one law: don't touch me or my stuff.
Yes, and it's not just, it's a broader concept, but it's also ordered in natural law. It's rooted in natural law versus a contractarian law. So Locke and later the libertarians very much adopt the language of natural law theory, but they've diverged philosophically because they've abandoned the metaphysics. And this is what I'm always arguing about, is that, people talk about our education system. This is, again, why, is for a moral and educated citizenry. They keep saying they took religion out of the education system. I would argue they didn't. They inverted it from the biblical framework. So they teach a very Gnostic kind of a religion, but it's humanism, right? It's a very religious.
Secular humanism, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Secular humanism, which the Supreme Court actually determined was a religion. So, it is religious. And I think that's actually what led the Aspen Institute to change their name. I can't prove that.
What was it?
It's interesting because it was originally the Aspen Institute of Secular Humanism. They dropped that part. It's just the Aspen Institute now. So,
well, it has secular humanism has a bad rap in Catholicism anyway. It's what the Jesuits,
of course,
have, yeah, or we attribute to the Jesuits having. But I want, now or whenever, I have fundamental question about the purpose and right justification of government itself to be something other than don't touch me or my stuff, to be something other than contractual, to be something that includes a like an ontological basis. And then, so I want your answer to that. And then I want to say, if you have to include ontology, you can't have a, hetero culture. You cannot have multiculturalism.
Well, you can have multiculturalism. I don't think that's not in the like UN sense of multiculturalism. That's not what I mean. But that's
You have to
all.
have a shared ethics if your
Yes, that's what
government is based on an
and the
ethical.
shared ethics, though, is rooted in a shared metaphysical understanding. So that's what Locke and the libertarians have abandoned. So this is where I was going with that, is I was saying that it is an inverted religious, it's still a religious system, but what they have taken out is metaphysics. So most people are not taught metaphysics. I mean,
Right, so what define metaphysics?
So literally metaphysics is just the study of the structure of reality, right? So it's just that's literally what metaphysics.
Right.
But when I talk about metaphysics, I am talking about it in an Aristotelian sense. Is this idea that we are, and a biblical sense as well. There's a very shared, but it's biblical without the theology, because different theology can complicate this and convolute it. So just taking the Judeo-Christian biblical Genesis origins of metaphysics is this notion that there is a creator, right? That we are not the architects of reality. There is a created order. There's a structure to things that was divinely ordered. We are separate from, there's a distinction between us and the creator, but we are imago Dei, right? We are made in the image of God, and we are endowed with free will because we are rational, moral beings capable of adjudicating truth and discerning truth from fiction. Again, we will make mistakes. We are fallible, but that is how we are wired. And truth is knowable. It is self-evident, right? And we are all created equal. When we are all created equal, doesn't mean we all have the same gifts, talents, strengths, or resources, right? It means that we are equal under the eyes of God. And the whole purpose of putting that, this is when I was saying that the problem with the Constitution not carrying out explicitly what was in the Declaration of Independence, they saw it as that was understood. And at the time it was understood. But because they didn't explicitly lay it out in writing in the Constitution, we have diverged so far from it. But the understanding was that the Declaration of Independence laid out, we are all created equal, right? That's under the eyes of God. Now the Constitution was supposed to be a body of law that said we are equal under the law as well. The problem when you start taking like a libertarian framework, a contractarian type of framework, is now it becomes the people become the arbiters of reality. The people, there is no inherent ontology.
Well, that's secular humanism. And that's the problem with secular humanism, is if you start looking at people in need of your compassion based on their virtue or your judgment, everybody falls short, because as a priest told me once, we're all pieces of shit, so we don't deserve it. And blah, blah, blah. You have to see in my religion, you have to see Jesus in everybody. You have to see the purpose of serving God. And otherwise you can't really do it. Otherwise it's for you. It is its own. It's what the theosophy, it's like Krishnamurti.
Yeah,
would say that, like, love doesn't exist except for to the fact that it makes you feel good about, charity doesn't exist except for to the extent that it makes you feel good. And whatever you think you're doing, you're always doing it for yourself. And I sat on that for a long time. And my husband was like, that's ridiculous. I was like, and I thought, well, let's just think about it for a couple of years. And I was like, okay, that's ridiculous.
Let's think about it for a few years.
Because I'm just serious. Like, is that really true? I need to live my life for a while and look at it in that term. I'm like, there is no way I'm doing this for anything but the love of God. I'm not getting off on it. Nobody can see me doing it. Nothing, zero. Even if there is no God, I have love of God. Like I have that imperative. And yes, it makes me feel less agitated, but only because that's my nature.
Right.
Not because I value it the way I value a delicious cocktail.
Right. Well, I think we are all wired, right? That's why people look for something to believe, because we know that there is something greater. I mean, that's just palpable. We don't have, obviously, that there's a reason it's called faith, is because we don't have tangible evidence always, but that is what we're wired to perceive. So I think that that is very natural. When you asked a question about, so then in government. Now, if you look at the way the Declaration of Independence is structured, I don't know exactly how many times, but it's more than 30 times they use the word usurpations of power. Like, they keep saying the usurpations and usurpations of power. So this implies, and I mean, right in that preamble is about the inalienable rights. So the whole purpose of the Constitution was really the idea of government. I hate the term government, to control the mind. I mean, it was a very poor choice of words. You can argue whether it was intentional or not. I don't really care. The ramifications are really what's more important, and it was a horrible choice of words. It should be a protectorate, because the whole purpose of the government is to limit their power to preserve our inalienable rights. The problem is when you start to look at everything from a contract perspective, whether it be social contract, property contract, legal contract, you have now made it's a void. There isn't some divine order and a natural law that you are subordinate to. You're now just subordinate to the voluntaristic agreement that you have made or entered into or signed contract for. And so you have now, you've inverted that order. So,
Well, what if the basic premise is that the non-aggression principle is the only self-evident truth? Like I said once, and it definitely described libertarianism, that the only right is the right to self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
That was I really thought about it. It's like the only right that you can really assert is to defend yourself against somebody touching you or your stuff. There are no other rights. You don't have a right to life because you're going to die. You can't possibly have a right to life. You have a right to defend your life. So, just saying, like, that's government, right?
You don't
In a
think
libertarian
right
perspective.
life? You do have a life. That's one of the named life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
But they can't give you that, though.
The
government can't give you life.
Right, that's it. It's part of your inalienable right. That's given to you from God. That's the whole point.
Right. No, I'm saying,
yeah,
you're distinguishing the Declaration of Independence from the Constitution, and I'm recognizing what you're saying about the Declaration of Independence. And what I'm saying is, as a libertarian, I had to not acknowledge that.
Right.
Because in my world of don't touch me or my stuff, the only right that's implied by that single foundational tenet is my right to defend myself. And that's it. So I can defend my life, but I don't have that. Yeah, I wasn't given that right by the government or you or anybody else. My thing about having life is outside of government.
Yeah. Well, and so, but it's also outside of natural law. So this idea of non-aggression principle, it sounds great. And I mean, I'm all for people not like overtly aggressing people. That's great. Don't go out.
It's not sufficient though. It's necessary, but not
in the 10 Commandments too. Like, don't murder, don't steal. Like, that's kind of non-aggression, right? But of course, you defend yourself because you have the right to your liberty, right, and your life. So that is a sanctity. But that's because it is. It's God-given. We have a givenness. Our nature is given. And so this whole principle of non-aggression is just, it's arbitrary. It comes out of nowhere. It's not rooted in anything. So it sounds great. And I mean, I'm not opposed to not aggressing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not justifying being an aggressor, unwarranted aggressor. That's not what I'm saying. But it's not anchored in anything. It doesn't presuppose that there is a creator, that there's a creation, that we are imago Dei, that we are teleologically wired for virtue. That is our ontology. We have a being. Our being is actually a fixed nature. There is a nature to being human. And that's what is not acknowledged.
And actually, if the nature of man, correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you're just short, brutish, and stupid, or whatever who's it, the Hume or something. If your nature was to be in a constant state of murderous connivance or whatever, then to state the law is don't touch me or my stuff, it just really, it would be very difficult to enforce that without a really elaborate, really powerful apparatus if the nature of man was to be in constant violation of that. The reason you can state that is that it's consistent with the nature of man. So mostly it's self-enforced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I would argue that like a murderous nature is you've absolved yourself of your humanity. It is not human.
It's a deviance. It's a perversion. It's not even a perversion or deviance. It's an inversion.
Yes.
We're meant to, sex drive is very strong. Like we're meant to live and give life
and create life. Yeah. That's what we're not wired to take away life. That's
to destroy.
And to destroy. And so if you see, right, because we are Mago Day, so that's our creative nature. Our creative nature is to create, to produce. It's not to destroy. So that, again, we sin, we miss the mark, and so that happens. But
actually, as an artist, maybe you can, I have no artistic anything, but I do recognize I recognize the truth and goodness in plumb and level and a perfect circle. And, there is good. I've used this example before. Like I've seen pictures of the cave paintings. Say again?
The good, true, the beautiful, and art is exemplary of that.
Yeah. And I remember seeing the cave paintings and my father's like, that just looks like chicken scratch. Any little kid could do that. And then I went to a store and they had, some artist had like kind of reproduced something like that and it sucked. And I was like, oh my gosh, like those cave paintings are real art. There's something beautiful and harmonious in them. And the fact that resonates with us, that it's consistent with a perfect circle and plumb and level. Like those are good concepts that are foundational to creation, not destruction. You wouldn't really need to yearn for that stuff if your nature was to destroy. That's because your nature is to create, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. And it resonates because it resonates with the divine harmonies that exist in nature. Right. So we recognize, mathematical principles, principles of, life, like the plants and nature.
And the universe has to do that. It has to do that or planets would crash into each other. It has to obey, these harmonies.
Exactly. So that's the problem with it is that it's philosophically incoherent. It's philosophically inconsistent. It has hypocrisies within it, but it maintains the language. So it's rhetorically very seductive because it sounds like it's natural law. They use that rhetoric, but they don't uphold it. There's nothing about natural law that they're anchoring to. And so that's why it's problematic. So government is really supposed to be, it's predicated on this shared metaphysic. That's the only way that it can work. And it is what makes the United States so unique from other governments. And it's why they've had to take metaphysics out of the school system, because in my opinion, and I think the founding fathers would agree, that was the bulwark against any despotism, any tyranny. And it's the same bulwark against the technocratic encroachment we're seeing today. Because if you don't believe that there is a creator-creation distinction, that we are Imago Dei, that we have inalienable rights, that there is some sort of a rational nature to humanity, and that there's a givenness to the order of things, then it gives license for people to play God, be self-apotheotic, and rewrite, wire us as cogs in a technocratic machine. We become just, cogs and algorithmically defined.
When you read about that stuff, the Mencius Moldbug stuff, the Peter Thiel, the Dark Enlightenment, I started to read your article, although I could not buy it for $2. I had to subscribe for $50.
What? No,
I didn't. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, you can buy just the article. I believe they have like the download version too.
All right, I'll when I have more time, I'll track it down. But I could see where you were going with just the preview.
Okay. Yeah.
That what those guys say is on its face just ridiculous and offensive. Like it's actually saying like you are your unit, you're a consumption unit. Like that's what you are. You're a consumption vehicle.
Yep.
And the fact that so many people, particularly libertarians, can be persuaded by that, which on its face is offensive, but it's not. I think you nailed why, like you explained why, but it just, not to mention, it violates all the rules that libertarianism says to lay down, which is just the one, like, don't touch me or my stuff. How do you create a government that facilitates commerce and quells riots and everything? Because you see what Trump's doing just in the past couple of days. He's gone, he's just going through the stage of fascism, socialism, making little babies fund to pay for little babies, subsidizing the farmers to pay for the other stuff. I mean, this stuff is absolute socialism.
Yeah.
And you need an apparatus of control of, you need taxes and enforcement to have something like that, no matter how efficient or ultimately prosperous you promise.
Well, I actually think that the system they're going into, libertarians are incredibly useful, because where they're really going is that it's all decentralized. So it's like ultimately going to be like smart villages or network states. And so I really think it's the libertarians who actually are driving it. And that's why you see so much overlap with like Peter Thiel, the quote unquote libertarian. You've got both these dark enlightenment and these like Game B. They've splintered. There are many movements now, so it's not all under the name Game B anymore. But it's essentially still, Jim Rutt and Brett Weinstein still call it Game B. They have it still on their Twitter handle. Some of the others have moved into the metamodernism, the
Game B, right? Game B.
Yeah, so it's all predicated on game theory. I wrote a pretty extensive article, two that are pretty detailed in this arena. One was my Epstein transhumanist conspiracy article. And this was really focused on Game B.
Where is that?
That's on my Substack.
Okay.
So, and it's pretty long. I think it's like almost 18,000 words with like maybe over a few hundred resources, so people can do their own spelunking. It's very detailed. But I talk about, I broke it down to 5 sections, and there's the, obviously the funding apparatus through Epstein. I talk about the Santa Fe Institute overlap. A lot of these different institutions. Section 5 is all on, there's a whole section on the intellectual dark web as an influence operation. I honestly think it's a, intelligence operation, to be really honest.
Definitely.
I don't have a smoking gun to prove that, but I'm probably never going to find it. So we'll just say it's just a crazy theory. But yeah, there's a lot of evidence.
I mean, the connections of the people involved, like if you look at, like had the CIA background, if you look at Thiel and Musk and stuff, the Sergey Brin, like all of these people were created by government.
Or yes, exactly. And so the IDW, it was actually
Palantir.
Yes. In Manifest Nirvana, Andrew Cohen actually said, and he's part of the integralist space. So Kenneth Wilber, integralism, that's another part of this Game B movement, ancillary kind of splinter groups. There's so many, the liminal web, the emergence projects, there's a lot. But in that article, I talk about how in Manifest Nirvana's white paper written by Andrew Cohen, he actually says, he doesn't use the word influence operation, but that's kind of my heavy-handed term. But he says that it pretty much was an incubator for Game B. And out of the intellectual dark web spawned the intellectual deep web, which was mostly launched which is Game B. And that is definitely a Game B, incubator. I would say more than incubator. I mean, it's really, they call it dialogos. So it's a generator, but it was mostly launched by Rebel Wisdom. David Fuller is known for his documentary work with BBC, which is historically tied to MI6. And one of his most famous documentaries is on Jordan Peterson. And so again, not a smoking gun, but it looks, and then my section 5 was all on the philosophical underpinnings. So there's kind of these two lineages. They come from Darwinian framework, which is at best a hypothesis. I don't even call it a theory. I mean, there's so little substantial.
It's mathematically impossible.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then
I'm not saying there isn't. I actually think Lamarck was closer, his epigenetics and stuff like.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. I think epigenetics has some merit, but So it's all predicated on Darwinian theory. However, there's one camp who are in the more like, physical eugenics, like genetic breeding, kind of like Mulbug, Musk, all of them are very much into Nick Land. They're all very much into that. And then certainly the evolutionary biologists like Brett Weinstein. And then the other camp who are, and that was certainly what Epstein was very involved in, but the other are the spiritual eugenicists who are more the, like Barbara Marx Hubbard kind of conscious evolution. And this is the David Temple. David Temple is the pseudonym for Mark Gaffney, Kenneth Wilber, and Zach Stein. Zach Stein was inducted to the Club of Rome last year in 2024. And they've written this first principles, first values of evolving perennialism, 42 propositions on cosmoerotic humanism. But that's all stems from social Darwinian theory. So, I mean, that's the underpinning for this, the philosophical foundations, and the only place that it can go is transhumanism and technocracy. And but for the same reason, it's because it's all nominalism. The same thing with libertarianism. It's nominalism. So it's not, and nominalism, I would say, actually, originates really in the early first few centuries, but it was officially coined by Occam. Right?
What is nominalism?
So nominalism,
name, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the idea that there is no grounding, there's no natural structure to reality. Everything is just concepts and names. So it's just whatever, and that's what the libertarians do, right? So it's just that we name something and then it becomes reality. It's not, it doesn't actually have, things don't actually have a universal.
You can literally speak something into existence.
Essentially that, which is what Nick Land calls hyperstition, or what is the religious variant of that is like the manifest thought, something like that.
Yeah.
Something about the word, the manifest word or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same. The secret is same kind of principle. It's all
the secret. Yes, the secret.
It's new thought, right? New thought is just theosophy with a stronger focus on mentalism, which is the first principle of Hermeticism. But yeah, nominalism is, and I think I talk about nominalism. I don't know if I did. Oh, in my technocratic philosopher, I have a whole section on the history of nominalism in that Substack article. But yeah, it's really this idea that there's not a natural order. There's not a true metaphysics. It's just, we name something and then that becomes the reality. There aren't universal truths. So it's just, whatever name is, yeah. That's
so
yeah. Look for that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm like, I think I lost the original
well,
question.
We were talking about
Sorry.
So the bigger picture was, what is ontology? How is it that libertarianism doesn't have one? And does a government need one? Or can, like, my sub question was, can you just separate out the contractual nature of government and the use of force from any kind of universal ontological agreement in society? And I feel like you can't really, at a really fundamental level, because if we were a bunch of homicidal maniacs all the time, you couldn't have a minimalist government and don't touch me or my stuff as your foundational principles. You would have to have a technocracy, like a totalitarianism, which is what they're saying. Like, we are going to, I mean, that's a big leap, but what the thing about the totalitarianism is, they're saying we can make society better than that which would have emerged from human nature by shaping, like, as if there is no human nature, that they can actually put the construct around it and we will just ooze into it, like as it is shaped.
Yeah.
And that can't, I've seen that before. Like, Obama was kind of like that. Like, I feel like that is some kind of socialism thing, or I don't know what, where change the world and man will change.
Yeah. Right. Instead of, right. So it's really, if you go back to, I'll answer this and then I remember where I was going with all that. But so it's really, if you go back to, it's essentially this dichotomy. So I recently had put out a whole series of exchanges. Unfortunately, I had a bit of an intellectual spat with a friend, but I think that there's a lot to learn from.
I caught that. Are you guys still friends?
I think we're still friends, but so first of all, my very first article was not to him at all. Like I never mentioned him. Like it was not personal. It was just, my time is very limited, and a lot of people are asking me questions, and I had written a very,
maybe he's trolling you, Courtney.
yeah, I don't know, but I had written a very lengthy response to someone, and then I was like, you know what, I just can't do this for everybody, so I'm just going to put it up, and then I put it on Substack so I could archive it, and I was like, this will be a reference. People have questions. Obviously, it's not conclusive because there's a lot to be said, but it's like there's a lot they can glean from this. You can go here, but he took it very personally, and in the back and forth exchange, actually none of it from my end was personal. It was all intellectual, and he never actually addressed my main argument. He resorted to all personal attacks. But I only bring it up because yeah. But I only bring it up because there's a lot to be. I think there's a lot for people to learn from it, and that's not to say they have to agree with me. That's just, I think people can really learn.
And what's the principle?
So the reason I bring it up is because there's a dispute between Aristotle and Plato, and now LaRouche is very reductionistic in his. He creates kind of a binary. He didn't like that I framed it as a Manichaean interpretation, but it is. It's Aristotle. He literally calls out Aristotle a Satanist. He reduces him.
Hold on. You're talking about Lyndon LaRouche.
Lyndon LaRouche.
Okay, so what's Manichaean?
Like where everything's like split, good and evil. It's all
right. Yeah, okay.
Black and white.
Right. Okay, and that's LaRouche's approach to Plato and Aristotle?
Yes. Aristotle is a pure empiricist in his mind. He reduces him, which is not true. That negates his whole concept of hylomorphism. Aristotle literally took Plato's concept of ideal forms, and he incorporated this notion that we can know something about the abstract and the ideals and the form through the particulars, through the tangibles. We have five senses for a reason.
Obviously, yeah.
We interact in the physical world, right? We are not just all in the mind.
Yeah, when you get too removed like that, it's irrelevant. It's just then what's the point of even thinking beyond that? You can't.
Why do we even exist? What is the purpose of our physical existence? What's the purpose of the physical domain? It is so that we can use that and integrate. So he is not a pure empiricist. This whole concept of hylomorphism actually combines the physical domain and the particulars, and he says that things have essences, but he calls it oisa. Oisa is the Greek term for the essence, but in the essence there is a purpose. There's a telos. So an acorn is it has a purpose. It's not just going to stay an acorn forever, right? Just like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. There's a purpose. There's a teleology, and so that's what he presupposes. So that's just factually incorrect. It's inaccurate. But he also, claims that he just paints this dichotomy between them, which negates the fact that he was a student for 20 years.
Well, maybe that's why, maybe it's that kind of thought infiltrating my environment that made me think that they took shots at Aristotle for facilitating the kind of Black nobility in Italy. And LaRouche, I don't know if he's one of those ones who highlights that. I think he is, because Webster Tarpley was a LaRouche guy, and he's the one who did that, Pendleton Zoo or whatever it was called, Pemberton, whatever it was. It was really great. Before my eyes were open to anything, I watched this 3-hour thing by Webster Tarpley. It's wow, mind blown. But they'll throw stuff in there like Aristotle was there to facilitate this kind of financial capitalism.
And it's purely, first of all, it's ahistorical. It's an anachronism.
Right. I'm glad we sorted that out. Thank you.
If you look at it in terms of the timeline, he's proto that system. So it doesn't even make sense.
Right. I mean, it's that is another thing. I was like, but wait a second. But if the Catholic Church trotted it back out, under the Borgias or something.
The late scholastic movement was very influenced by the Jesuit interpretation of Aristotle. And that was, again, what I was saying is he synthesized with Neoplatonism. It was not an accurate, pure Aristotelian framework.
But see, for me, I felt, and I could maybe misunderstand it because I am a total hack and autodidact when it comes to this stuff at best, that Aristotle was more appropriate for Catholicism because
Yes.
that it was more individual. So, like, I always think suffering and decision making is individual. Like,
Mm.
you can't sin as a group. You can sin as a person. You can suffer as a person. You have to not punish an entire group for something that only some of them did or whatever. You have to mete out your justice individually so that the innocent actor does not suffer, because they alone are in control of their behavior. They need to be accountable to that's how you control behavior, is when if the consequences and rewards were generalized, then you would do exactly what people do in crowds, which is much worse behavior. And I felt like Aristotle supports that view more than,
Yeah. And that's
Plato.
I would argue through Magnus and Aquinas, very much
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I would agree with that. I mean, they don't negate the fact that there are groups and the concept of, human flourishing in social relations. They don't negate.
See, this is where I can't, I don't get that. I just don't understand social group anything. I don't understand any kind of where your obligation could possibly arise other than individual behavior. And I'm required to do like works of mercy and stuff. We're required to do good, but I don't understand society at all. I don't get it.
Well,
I don't know how you tell people they're responsible for it.
Well, it's not like a group is responsible, but you have a responsibility and a duty for morality, especially in a way that it impacts other people.
I've been reading the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and he's like all over, like, your duty is to society. And I'm like, you were an emperor.
Oh, no. I've always thought that the Stoics were an op.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I have a whole theory about it, and I don't have a whole lot of evidence. It's
wow.
Really, that's always been my gut instinct. But they again, they completely abandoned metaphysics. There is no metaphysical foundation in Stoicism. It is all centered on the individual. So it's the extremes that are a problem. Aristotle talked about the mean, which is like you take, that's how you get virtue, is you have the two extremes, you have the mean, and that's the golden mean, right? This binary kind of logic is what leads to Hegelian dialectics. And I would argue Plato, so this is where I was going with all this, is so Plato is he's really the originator of the dialectic. He had that whole concept of the divided line. You have the intelligible realm, the unintelligible realm, and I always say the experts are trying to put themselves on the top of the divided line. So that's why they know so much more than you, because they've achieved the noesis, which I would argue is not that different than gnosis, but he calls it
I wonder.
Right? Yeah. And I know most people are familiar with like the allegory of the cave, watching the shadows, king comes in, right? So he talks about this having the noesis, which is when you ascend. So it's the spiritual ascendant. So the whole point of my bringing this up is when LaRouche talks about this dichotomy between Plato and Aristotle, I think it's a very reductionary kind of a framework, and it's inaccurate. However, what I will say is what it goes back to, if you are going to look at like a binary and a bifurcation between the two, I would say Plato was the originator of this concept of becoming. So when you brought up Obama, right, he's a great example of that. Didn't Michelle, isn't that her book, Becoming?
Good point.
It's this idea of the Illuminati, the order of the perfectibilists. Right? It's this idea that man is perfectible. We are becoming, we are ascending, we are becoming, it's self-apotheosis. We are going to become godlike, arrogating ourselves to godlike status, or a panentheism. There's a God within everyone, which is very different from Aristotle's notion of being. Being is ontology, but it is ontology wired for a telos, wired for purpose, and it is a fixed nature. That is part of what we are. That's intrinsic to what being human is. And this, to me, is the ultimate split. It's the two lineages. So from Plato, you get these Neoplatonists, where everything's emanating from the one, and our whole purpose is to return and unite with the one. From that, you get the rebranded version, which is called Theosophy. Madame Blavatsky herself says that Theosophy comes from Neoplatonism. She also, cherry picks from like Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the Eastern philosophies, and a lot of the syncretic variations, the mystical variations of traditional religions, but not the traditional religion. She's very opposed to Judaism, Christianity, even traditional Islamic faith. But the syncretic variations, the mystical versions like Kabbalah, whether it's with the K, C, or Q, she supports. And so you get that, and then you get the, all the various offshoots of that, the New Thought, this whole kind of, esoteric lineage from the Renaissance, the Ficino, and all those different kinds of Hermetic thinkers. This is all coming from the notion of becoming, that we can ascend and become these higher, godlike or perfectible beings, versus the realist metaphysics, which says that no, we have a fixed nature. There is an ordered reality, and we are given. It's a givenness. Our being is given.
I almost feel like, sorry.
Yeah, no, go on. Yeah.
Okay. I almost feel like getting back to the cave paintings, that is kind of evidence that human beings are human beings, that they had the same emotions and sensibilities. It looked like to me, possibly. And because I always think that when I read, a lot of history, if I'll read old enough history where it's like a world, world's lit only by fire, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's even old writings, like really old, like Canterbury Tales or whatever.
Yeah.
They seem like human beings to me.
Yeah. They don't seem very different. The only thing that really changes, human nature doesn't change. Technology changes.
Right. And now I'm worried about nanobots. Like that would be the way to change human beings. I want you to tell me about that too. But
yeah. So, but I did when I was talking about the libertarians creating the new system, what I was pointing out there is that because you have all of these different funnels, like the network states, essentially what they want are these smart villages that are going to be interconnected in the AI world society. And hopefully later this week, I'll get an article out on that, where they're going with that. But this AI world society, they talk about Ukraine being the central node. And I still haven't figured out why. I have theories, but I don't have any kind of hard evidence as to why they chose Ukraine. But they do say it'll be the central node that's connected to all of the other smart cities. So whether it be the 15-minute cities, the C40, I wrote an article on the path to mass surveillance, and it's all about the different types of smart cities. They have different branding, right? Because I use the analogy of like the simulacra of ice cream buffet, and it's all made with chemicals and poison, but they give you different flavors to appeal to different palates. So if you want,
the flavors are actually made of chemicals and poison.
Exactly. They're going to get you to swallow the poison. It's just, do you prefer the strawberry flavor or the chocolate vanilla?
I'm just trying to look at a map. I once wondered if you had a globe that was only made of the land, like a wire globe that was just, you've seen them. It's like completely hollow. It's kind of artistic, but it's the land is made of metal. It's maybe connected by a few wires, but there's no water basis. If you were to balance that on a pin, you could find the weight, the central weight of it all.
Okay.
Where would that be? And you could similarly do it with if you weighted every point on Earth by the population that lived on it, where would that balancing point be? Where, if everybody were to take a plane to one spot, what would be the minimum number of miles traveled on Earth? And I think the geographical center is Cairo. I think possibly the airplane center is Atlanta, which has the biggest airport in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it the biggest? I thought it was just the biggest in the country.
Maybe it's the biggest in the country, yeah. And then I don't know what would be, I don't know if Mumbai or whatever has a bigger one. I don't know, but if you look at Ukraine looks pretty central as if you're looking at the geography of it all, quite central.
It is. I've had that thought as well. I think that's a huge part of it. When you read their symposium, they're always saying how it sounds very much like tear down to build back better. They do these symposiums on how Ukraine has been decimated in the war.
Well, that's another thing. It's not coherent. There's no, look at it. It's got no gravitas of cultural union. It's the opposite.
Exactly. And it has been a hotbed for a lot of money laundering, certainly the biowarfare lab.
Most corrupt place on earth for the longest time, or so, some might argue.
Yeah.
And still.
I mean,
Trump just called Zelensky a deadbeat. He's like, oh, he didn't even read the peace plan. And he just bought Bill Cosby's mansion for $30 million, by the way, Zelensky did.
He what?
I think he bought Bill Cosby's house in New York City for $29 million.
What?
I read it on the internet. So it's gotta be true.
It's such theatrics. That's so crazy.
It probably is true though. Because I did read it on the internet.
Yeah, right. You saw it on the internet. It probably is true.
But I think it probably is true.
It probably is. That's just crazy. It's so wild. But they're also doing a lot of the technocratic, technological testing ground with the war in Ukraine.
Now, do you know that, or are you assuming that? I mean, it seems self-evident, but do you actually have meat on those bones, like in your many, many references on your many articles?
Yeah,
I don't know
off the top of my head, but I know that
the
technology they're using, a lot of it's Palantir technology. So people keep talking about it in Gaza, but actually that's the same technology being used in Ukraine, that kind of like a drone warfare technology. So I know that, but I think there's other references as well. I don't off the top of my head have those sources, but yeah, no, they're definitely doing a lot of testing for technological.
Right. Any cutting edge technology is tested in its first uses. So I think that's not a leap to say, but yeah. So
I was just saying, so their end goal is these kind of like everything in like smart kind of like network states that are run by smart technologies that ultimately are decentralized. So people will feel, so the libertarians keep building
blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. And the libertarians are the ones who are building through the tech optimists and tech libertarians and through these like exit and build enclaves. They think that they're exiting and they're, getting out of the system. And I'm not opposed to creativity, ingenuity, and building parallel systems. I'm not saying that. However, I don't think they recognize that the whole purpose is to create a noosphere, a world brain. What did H.G. Wells say would be the conduit to create the world brain? He said it was going to be the decentralized ganglia, which at the time were the academic, he said it was the information institution. So academia, the media, but today that's the technology. That is the internet.
Right. And it's not decentralized. It's a web with nodes.
That's right. And even Balaji Srinivasan in his book, Network State, and I have this in many of my articles, but I definitely have it in the Phoenix Conspiracy article. But I actually show, I've screenshotted from his book, the Network State, where he says it is decentralized towards a re-centralized center. So the whole purpose, and when we start moving into Web3 technologies, people don't have an understanding of how Web3, 6G, DAOs, and all of these new emerging technologies lead to this kind of web-centric, and web in the sense of all these nodes being interconnected, but it's decentralized. And it's essentially leading us towards, they're using socio-technical systems towards a cyber-physical system where you have this like constant interplay between human intelligence and computation. Artificial computation, right?
That's what Elon said. He said, you're not going to have a phone. You're going to have an AI interface in 5 years. That's very 2030. But I don't actually think they're on track for that. I'd be curious to know if you did think they're on track for it.
I actually do. And I will just say, I want to point out, again, this is why the metaphysics is so important, because if you believe that we can just be rewired through
you have no defense.
Exactly.
You have no argument.
Yes.
That's what I want to say one thing about before we move on to that 6G and stuff. But first I will say this, that's what's so dangerous about what Trump has done in this. From the beginning, from 2015, I said, that guy never talks about the Bill of Rights. That's a problem. And fast forward 10 years to Doge and whatever, and start saying like efficiency of government. I personally don't want efficient governments. I think the most efficient governments in the world have killed most efficiently their own people, have all of that. I mean, you can say anybody you want. They're quite efficient, and that's very dangerous in my opinion. But that was the problem with Trump never talking about the Bill of Rights and always just talking about it's our turn. I can do it better, and I can do it for you. I didn't like that. But I would say that what you're saying about this interface, or however you put it, I observed from a science fiction book I was reading a couple of years ago. I had an aha moment, which was this. I forget what term they use in the book, but so this flat earth phenomenon, the flat earth conspiracy, whatever, it serves a couple of purposes. One, it's a way to make people look ridiculous.
Yes.
But that's not all. I think it's by establishing this ridiculous subculture, it's a way to it's going to be used as a metaphor for people who don't make the transition into the metaverse. That people who are still like using a keyboard on a flat screen instead of interfacing are going to be flat earthers.
Yeah.
They're flat screeners. Like that, I think was in the book. It was like flat screens that, oh, she's a flat screen. Like, forget her. And I really think that's what I think there's going to be a stigma if you don't embrace the interface.
Yeah, I've never actually really thought about that, but you know what, I think that's actually pretty astute, because when you think about so many of the people who are pushing this flat earth, there's a lot of ties to like the Institute of Noetic Sciences who are studying.
Oh, really? I mean, there's something weird about it. Yeah.
There's something very weird about it, but they're studying so you've got the two kind of extremes, like is on the one end, they're studying this like quantum physics that's not quite, it's not like the origins of quantum physics. It's got a very woo-woo mystical, the secret kind of component to it.
Yeah, the action.
Yes.
Which is what 6G is, right?
Yeah, so 6G, 6G is definitely like it's legitimate because that's based on actual frequency.
But isn't spooky action supposedly that you can separate an atom by 7 miles and turn one electron and the other one's
it is.
I thought that's what 6G was, but you explain it to me. I'd rather. And I cut you off because you were going to say it gets woo-woo, the quantum stuff gets woo-woo.
Yeah, woo-woo, because they talk about a lot of this quantum stuff in terms of like noosphere consciousness, like all the studies on telepathy. I mean, there's a reason why Elon has patented telekinesis and telepathy. He patented it for the Neuralink. So that's really, and all these studies they've been doing over the years. So I think there's a straight line through like Oliver Reiser's Cosmic Humanism, Buckminster Fuller's Spaceship Earth, to Changing Images of Man. Changing Images of Man document. Right, Oliver Reiser talked about like the sensorium. It's again very much a Teilhard de Chardin noosphere kind of concept. This world brain, collective brain. But then they talk about Buckminster Fuller was always talking about the biosphere and how the biosphere is going to integrate. And now that they're going into synthetic biology, I think that this is where we get that convergence. It's biodigital convergence. That's like what it's called. And then the Changing Images of Man document was the final publication was in 1982, but they did earlier like editions of it in the 70s. And
is that the Council of Rome? Which one was that?
It was a Stanford Research Institute, and the primary editor was Willis Harman, who was the chairman of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, ION, for 2 decades. He also did it with W.O. Markley, who was doing all those remote viewing studies. And then a lot of it was like Joseph Campbell was one of the editors, and I have it printed out, the PDF. To get the physical copy is like a few $1,000s, but it's used as an elite graduate textbook. Like people like Kissinger would read this book. The ideas of it were popularized through Marilyn Ferguson's Aquarian Conspiracy in 1984. And Marilyn Ferguson was the assistant to Willis Harman. There's some researchers, like LaRouche actually is one of them, who claimed that she actually wrote it. Now, I don't know that to be true, but I do know she was his assistant. And I know that for a fact. Constance Cumby actually knew her and would tell me stories about her. So she definitely was his assistant. But in that, they talk about the changing man's perception of man, his consciousness, and how the new world religion, the one world religion, is going to be perennialism. And it will be, they don't use the term AI God because this was, much earlier, but that's essentially what they say, that we're steering towards like this spaceship Earth, but Buckminster Fuller kind of concept. And then now we have what I believe is the updated iteration of this, which is the what I mentioned before, David Temple's First Values, First Principles of Evolving Perennialism, 42 Propositions on Cosmoerotic Humanism. And this was written by David Temple is a pseudonym. I find it hilarious. They didn't want any ego involved, so they created a pseudonym. But there's nothing egotistical or hubristic about anthropontology, where we rewrite the story of the universe and literally redefine what it means to be human. So we go from Homo sapiens to Homo amor, which I wrote a Substack article on this, comparing Nick Land's Homo autocatalyticus to David Temple's Homo amor.
What's the 42? David Temple's 42 what?
Propositions on cosmoerotic humanism. So, and I break down these concepts in my my Substack on the two post-human visions. It is a transhuman vision. So in the cosmoerotic humanism, they of course talk about how they're against transhumanism, techno-feudalism, but again, because they've eradicated metaphysics and they're redefining what it means to be human, the only path it can go, the only result is transhumanism and technocracy. And they're talking, but what they're actually steering us for is this notion that we have to parent AI to create a benevolent AI. And now Ben Goertzel and Annalise Smithman, who is a Game B person, she calls it the anti-Malachian system. This is straight Game B vernacular. They are creating something called a participatory framework for global AGI. And it's a global constitution. And in it, they literally talk about parenting the AGI so that it will have good ethics, like the ethics that are aligned with Ben Goertzel's AI for Good, that he's working with the UN and the World Economic Forum. And it's this, and they talk about how humans might have to be subordinate to the AI, the AGI, because it will have better ethics than we do, because they're better stewards of the planet, because they
But garbage in, garbage out. Like, who's making this decision, and what are the values? I mean, it's going to be consensus driven, but we don't get to be part of the consensus. So then it's just master and slave.
And I will just also add to this is that they couch a lot of this in the Gaia frame, Gaia worship framing, but we can't lose sight of the social impact finance. While the Gaia is the justification for these ethics, they're using kind of like Fabian social ethics to steer us, through this incremental kind of ethical framework under the auspices that we have to protect the planet. However, it is really about creating energy credits. It's really about commodifying all the world's resources, including human capital. So that can't be lost, because I think people get very focused on the, like, oh, we're against Gaia worship, but you look at what Trump's doing. And even when he talks about the sovereign wealth fund, it's this whole narrative that, the Gaia worshipers, they might not use that term. They may say like the green energy or the Greta Thunberg people, but that they are precluding us from having access to our resources, which I don't dispute. There's truth to that. But then they're advocating things like nuclear power to power this next generation nuclear, but to power things like all of these data centers and this whole AI framework. So it becomes a Hegelian dialectic, because really what we have to think about is the future and how it's being run. And all these people who think that they're operating in good faith, but who are helping to build this infrastructure. And that's why I was saying, actually, I think the libertarians are helping to build this narrative under the guise that it's personal sovereignty. We're going to have digital sovereignty, which I think is an oxymoron, digital sovereignty. But they're claiming that that's what they're doing. But really, they're helping to build this system that becomes part of this, interconnected web. It's not really decentralized.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it was a lot.
No, but you're going to have to, this is where you're going to have to tie it together, which is this. And I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking, and you're going to synthesize it, and you're going to tell me what I'm really thinking. Okay. So you said it's dialectic. It sounds like Gaia versus Sovereign Wealth Fund is two sides. I definitely see the like traditional liberal bullshit. I'm going to say like the Council of Rome stuff, whatever, all that stuff, this the changing images of man, whatever. And then I see this other thing emerging on the Trump side, which is the technocracy or whatever. It seems to me they are kind of marching forward together, and ultimately will converge. But specifically, what person, people, or group is behind the kind of traditional liberal think tank mumbo jumbo from, like the Council of Rome, Trilats, all that kind of stuff. Right. And then specifically the Sovereign Wealth Fund, like when you look at who, was it David Rockefeller? That seems ridiculous. Or is it a bunch of people? Is King Charles? Is it like the Jews are behind everything? Like, what is the answer? Tell me the answer.
Okay, well, it's pretty complicated. I will. So here, I'll give you a little bit of help in our book, The Final Betrayal, which I recommend everybody to get because
I'm totally getting that. I actually would like an autograph copy.
Yeah.
But I want to buy it from you because I saw in your little back and forth, I didn't read much, but that you're totally unsponsored. Is that correct? Are you asserting that you are 100% listener supported?
100%.
Wow. 100%. That's tough. I mean, I'm not supported, but I have, my husband pays for me. Someone buys my food. So
yeah, well, and my husband does people have no idea.
Yeah, you work together. It's and
it's like, I mean, the amount of work that I'm spending all the time with the research, and obviously I'm on the show, but then he's creating like all the graphics, he's doing all the tech, he's editing everything, he's uploading everything. I mean, it's like even when I finish a show, like then he's working double time, like through the night.
Yeah, that's why I realized that I was no longer a paying subscriber to your Substack, and I subscribe to people who like the value for value. I understand that model, but I subscribe to people who I know are working hard, bringing a professional level of intellect and effort, and are relying on it to. You're paying them to do that. So I can't read all your stuff, but I want to support it. So I want to buy the book, and I'm going to buy the book, probably buy several of them. But I also want an autograph copy.
Yes, and I want to get you an autograph copy. I just got some author copies finally. So
great.
I didn't even have my own copy for a while, just like I didn't have a copy of my own.
Yeah. So I'm always happy to support. Don't ever give me anything free, but I want.
Thank you. I really appreciate and when I was saying, I wasn't saying that to like be a whiner, but I'm like, that literally doesn't even cover, like people don't really, I know you know, but just to cover like all the subscriptions so that the things can go out on the air. I mean, like StreamYard has a subscription, Zoom has a subscription, then like,
oh, I know,
everything's a monthly subscription. I'm like, yeah, it's really expensive just to keep the show running.
I even pay through the nose to use Megaphone, which is the Spotify thing, which gives you commercials, but like in January it doesn't cover. Like January, there's no commercials in January, basically, like just because of Christmas. I don't know how long you've been using it, but January just plummets.
I don't get anything from the commercials. Like I still, and I know
like nets out, right?
But I don't know.
Rumble too. It just nets out.
Exactly.
And YouTube, I'm totally demonetized. So I couldn't buy my own food. There was a time when I worked 7 days a week where I could, because that's what it takes. And that's what you guys do. But yeah.
So I'm like, we're launching the Tallow. They're working on that. So I'm hoping that will support some of the work that we're doing. But yeah, it does help buy the book. But we didn't write this book to make money. I mean, yes, it does help and we appreciate it, but that was really not why we wrote it.
You had to do it all.
You can see it's a really short book. what I was going to say is chapter 11 has the players. So now this is not all the players, but this is the players who are operating through the Trump administration. So they're operating through, quote unquote, the right-hand path of the political spectrum, the technocrats who are involved in the Trump administration or affiliated or influencing the Trump administration currently. So, as I said, it is very dialectical. So there are movements going on globally, and certainly there's overlap between some of the players and those movements, but we were focusing really on what's going on here in America through Trump, primarily because we felt like, the left hates Trump. It's Orange Man bad. And, they don't even really, in my opinion, have good reasons for hating him. It's just,
no, it's terrible because I have good reasons for hating him. And the TDS out here, they literally think I'm a Trump supporter.
Yes.
Because when they say like he's, you can just tell he's evil or whatever, I'm like, you are missing the point. This isn't about Trump at all. And they're just like, oh, she's defending Trump. I'm like, I'm not. You're going to give us Newsom. You're giving us Newsom.
I've gotten so many arguments with people and people in our milieu, people who are in this like independent sphere. And I'm like, they're like, you're a Trump, cheerleader. You're just a MAGA. I'm like, have you listened to me for more than like 5 seconds? Because if you had, I mean, I literally just wrote a whole book.
You did vote for him though. And I did not.
Yeah. No, I did vote for him. And but not because I was naive to what was
happening. Lesser of two evils, but I'm not sure about that because
I will say this. There were certain, I feel like certain financial, which gives people my hope. People this is the reason we're losing our country, is because people think you vote for someone and then they're going to save the day. That's not how it works. You don't like check a box and then sleep at the wheel for 4 years and then say, oh, okay, well, I did my part. That's not how this works. I was really hoping. Now, even Doge, like I know what Doge was all about because I know the Dark Enlightenment philosophy. And I didn't just learn about it, 2 months ago when people were like, oh my gosh, wait, there's this Curtis Yarvin guy who wrote his Mentions Mole book. He's been blogging for almost 2 decades. And people are all of a sudden like, oh, there's this Dark Enlightenment thing going on. I'm like, Nick Land has been working since the CCRU was operating since 1993. This isn't new, right? Like this has been operating in the background and influencing very influential people for a very long time. But I knew the philosophy of the Dark Enlightenment, and I was like very concerned about Doge because I really thought it was more part of this bigger project for RAGE, retire all government employees, replace it with AI, the whole technocratic system. However, here's where the opportunity was. You had all this disclosure of like, all this USAID money, all this bloated spending, this wasteful apparatus. And what did people do? They did nothing. Nobody got up and said boo. And this is where I get so upset with the American people, because you do have an opportunity there and you could have stood up and taken some action. And this is what I felt like Trump would do. And honestly, he has given lots of opportunities. There was some breathing room. And especially like financially, people who are completely decimated and giving, 40%, 50% of their taxes to the government are not people who are going to be able to be ingenuity, and resourceful, and they're not
100%. It is not possible to go Ron Paul now. It is just not.
It isn't. So I felt like, well, he would give a little breathing room to some people, and I was hoping this was my underestimation, of human nature, but I really thought people would get up and take action. The people who would do something that would help advance our liberties. And people don't. They just sit back and say, we've been so demoralized.
It actually was, the impact was the opposite. I can understand what you're thinking. And I think a lot of people thought that even the second time around. But like Rosa Quarry, behind the green mask, she was saying that she had a really robust growing movement against Agenda 21, and people stopped showing up in 2016 when Trump was elected. So it was, he convinced them that they didn't have to get up.
Right. Well, that's my problem. But see, again, this isn't about Trump. It's called self-governance for a reason.
I agree. My mother used to say that too. I would say Edward Bernays, yada, yada, yada. And she would say, it's not his fault. You got to stand your ground. You got free will. You can think.
But this is, again, why they take out metaphysics. People don't think they have free will. I mean, there are literally people walking around and don't believe in free will. and this is from all spectrums, from the atheists to the mechanistic people to, some their religious sects of Christianity that don't believe in free will.
And there's a lot of other things that have gone on as far as like literally dumbing people down, not just
Yes.
metaphysics, but actually knowing how to grow food, or getting very, very addicted to a lot of comforts, whether it's drugs or screens or whatever. Like the weight of addiction, the yoke of addiction is very heavy, and especially if you don't even know what it is. Plus the horrible, horrible tax burden, which is focused on professionals like my husband, me. Like if we didn't have such a huge tax burden here, I would not have to struggle, but I could go Ron Paul. You know what I mean? I used to spend 7 days a week doing this, but you just, the restraints are intentional. And so, I would argue a little bit with my mom about that, but the fact is, and I want you to tell me, like, until the nanobots eat our brains away, we do still have those three things.
Yes. And so I was saying, like, the left hates Trump, it's orange man bad. Now, the problem with the right is exactly what you're saying. A lot of them have just bought whole scale, this whole narrative of make America great again. We don't have to do anything, we're saved. And it's almost like, orange man bad and orange Jesus. It's like, okay, can we have a little rational, like maybe in between?
100%. But that's how you get it out of the realm of ideas and into the personality realm on both sides.
Cult of personality. And so we felt like it was really important to write this book because so many people, on both sides are either just, oh, Trump's terrible and we have no hope for another 4 years. And then the other side is like, oh, well, if we're all saved, we don't have to do anything. And nobody's paying attention. I'm not saying nobody, but a lot of people have no idea the technocratic infrastructure, the groundwork that is being laid, this regulatory body, and that Trump is, abetting through a lot of his policies and things he signed. Again, it's not about him. People want to vilify him, glorify him. This plan would have gone underway regardless of Trump. I don't think they would have, used the derivative accelerationism. I don't think they would have accelerated quite as, with explosive force the way they are now, under the other administration. But this isn't his plan. This has been in the works for, I would argue, like at least decades, if not a century.
Just look at the AI executive order.
I know
that did not come out of the mind of an 80-year-old real estate developer or real estate branding agent. Like that, he didn't even run a casino, which is like a gimme. So this guy did not come up with the AI. And your thing, very few people focused on that AI executive order, which is insane. That thing is nuts. And I saw you name it by name, the action plan.
Yep.
I mean, that's just proof positive that this guy is absolutely just the personality, the persona, that Zelensky's popular guy. Obama was one also, that just neutralizes 50% of the population. And it's the 50% of the population who would have been more vociferous than if the other side was the one who's championing.
Right. And that's why I always say they create the narratives through the left, but they advance agendas through the right.
Oh, that's very astute too. Yeah. So you're telling me that your book is going to give me an insight into what are the two sides, who's really behind it, why? Give me more.
Not so much on the sides. I have an article called The Phoenix Conspiracy where I do really lay out the dialectical nature of this. But this was really focused more on the dark enlightenment component and Silicon Valley and the ties to, Larry Fink and
yeah. But do you think, I actually have to read that because I was challenged by somebody. I was just at a thing like I hate to like dox people who I know, but I went to Stanford, so I know people who live in Silicon Valley.
Sure.
And one guy was just like, he's like, why do you think that there's a conspiracy or whatever? And I was just rattling off some shit about Thiel and Fink and stuff. And he's like, I know that guy. And I was just like, okay, well, they're bought and paid for, they're frauds. Look at their origin story, whatever. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I have to actually go back and do the research and, present it. So I need a little firepower. You're footnotes are going to come in handy.
Yes, we have so many footnotes.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good. I like that. But I want to understand, are these, is it Satan, lizards? Is it just people who have, I mean, my guess is it's people who have intergenerational advantages that are interconnected with, I would say, the military industrial complex, whether it's energy, defense, or finance, and now their children, big tech, big pharma, big ag. Like, that's what I feel like how it works. And that they're just carrying on what they were taught to do, and they have massive amounts of wealth, but there is a big agenda. Is there a person or group that's at the top of that? Give me a little color on all that.
So I think it's way more complicated than that. I know.
Really?
Yes, I really do. I know people want like a smoking gun. And I always say, I know you've heard me say it, like the only game people learned to play growing up was Pin the Tail on the Donkey. And they're just like, okay, where's the boogeyman? And they just want the one boogeyman. And then that's the answer to everything.
Yeah, Marco Polo.
Yes, and Marco Polo. It's just not that simple in my estimation at all. So if I were to make one boogeyman, maybe it's Satan. We wrestle not with flesh, but powers and principalities. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. But then you look at it in the physical domain. I think that what you have yes, have these very powerful elite families, right? These, most of them, we don't know their names, but, like Orsini's and Medici's. And I do think they have a lot of power because they have a lot of wealth. And, it's a kind of untouchable type of wealth. And they have this lineage that gets passed through intergenerationally. And there's a lot, that gets connected through secret societies, through political or aristocratic kind of positions. So I think there's some truth to that. I don't negate that, but I don't think that this whole beast system is being created just by these 13 families. I don't think it's quite that simple either. You have the central banks. They're obviously very powerful. I would call the Bank of International Settlements is like, the top of it's like the main hub, the epicenter. But we've got I really call it the 4 city states: the Vatican, the Bank of International Settlement, the city of London, and of course, DC. Or maybe we could call it the Federal Reserve or whatever. But, and those are very, very powerful institutions. They call a lot of the shots. Definitely, they have a lot of control over the world economic system, which certainly puts situational pressures on the rest of the world and how we transact. And, that's obviously a tremendous locus of power. But it's not everything. And then you've got these, obviously, the military industrial complex. But when you think about the military industrial complex, it's like the Five Eyes, right? So now you've got all these different companies with, companies, Freudian slip there, but, like countries who are operating, they have different interests. They are sovereign nation states, but then they're colluding together on these various technologies, military strategy, intelligence reports. So, I mean, that's definitely a factor. And they often work with secret societies, kind of the way a mafia would work, because that's how they can execute plans, because you have these covert kind of institutions that also use brainwashing tactics. And then you've got independent people. Yeah, I mean, we've obviously got Silicon Valley who's building this infrastructure. That's not to undermine what China, Russia, and some of the other countries, they're building tremendous. When Trump talks about in the AI action plan how it's basically like an arms race, Cold War, we have to become China to defeat China. I think he means it, because China just came out with their article talking about how they're building, they don't use the word technique, but essentially the technology for the global technique and working with the UN. And so Trump's like, well, we need to build the technique. And
he means it, but he's wrong about that. You don't have to build it. Look at how China and Japan have stood on our shoulders all these years. We are not better off than they are, having spent all the effort of creating a lot of this technology in the first place.
No. What I'm saying is he's saying that because he wants us to be the technique. So he's saying,
right. Okay. Yeah. But that's also bullshit. That's what they've always said about China. And it's not true. And it's the same thing about Japan. Like, what happens to these places when they're command and control societies? Japan had the biggest financial crash in human history, probably. And I don't even know if it's broken even yet. And China has ghost cities.
Yeah, but China is working very much with the global infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the Technate isn't something that they're all building that he wants to build and everything, but I'm saying you could opt for liberty
Oh yeah, yeah.
and not allow that to
No.
emerge, and you will be better off because this too shall collapse under its own weight eventually.
Oh, I think so. But I'm just saying when he says like we have to
Yeah, he means it. Yeah,
he
yeah,
means it. He's saying because we need to be the Technate. He's saying we're in that the third pillar. He talks about
yeah.
exporting the stack globally. So essentially, he's saying
I
we're
know.
going to be the Technate.
Unbelievable. And he
It,
acts like it's to make America great. It's like, not really. Like, who is going to pay for this and who's going to benefit from it? Those are two
exactly.
different questions.
So then to the other players, you've got like so definitely Silicon Valley is a huge component, and then all of these these technocrats. But then you've also got just like everyday techno optimists who are building these various modalities that are going to feed into this system, and they think that they're not. But so it's and then there's one other component. I will say the shared worldview, and this is again where I go back to just to make it really simple, this because we can call it like Gnosticism, we can call it the theosophy. There's so many different variants of the same thing, but really it's this being versus becoming. If we want to make it super simple, and this is this worldview between people who believe that there is a creation distinction, there is a givenness to our nature, there is a natural order of things, that we have inalienable rights and free will. And then people who think that they can essentially play God, that there is no natural order and that they can be the architects of reality. And so they arrogate themselves to the godlike status. And I think that's what they're doing with the technology. It's a technological immunization of the eschaton.
Okay, and that may be the thing that that provides me the continuum I'm looking for between like Adorno and the Council of Rome and the Frankfurt School and the tech. Because I'm saying who started the techno thing in motion, and you can look at it was like the military, World War II, Vietnam, like you could see that, but it all relies on this way of thinking, and then it feels almost like Zelensky, the technotronic era, it's just a means to an end.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that it's they think that is the end, right? That's they want to create the technological singularity is the noosphere, like that.
But they already wanted to transform man.
Yes,
and this is how they're doing it. And
yeah.
that's, I think, how Adorno or whatever. You were nodding like this is a through line with Adorno.
Yeah,
Can you tell me why you think so?
Yeah, I do think that there's that through line. But again, like if we go all the way back to, and I mean, I think Plato also just kind of rebranded the ancient mysteries, right? I don't think he was all that original either. There's nothing new under the sun, right? So, but he was certainly in terms of creating a codified, philosophical body of work. You could argue most of philosophy, most of history is actually a footnote to Plato. And there is this, through line that is juxtaposing. So this metaphysical realism, which I would argue that Aristotle codifies. Again, I don't think he created it. If one believes in a biblical framework, you would say God created it. There's a natural order to things, and there is self-evident truths, and we can know it, and we have these inalienable rights. That's God-given. But I would say, from philosophical through line, Aristotle codified that. And so you have from there, it is this, the cultural Marxists, Adorno and the whole Frankfurt School, they're really just taking, they're drawing on that whole tradition. I mean, they didn't originate it. They just took it into a cultural framework where they adopted Gramsci's concept of cultural hegemony, infiltrating through the culture. Which now the right is appropriating for their own purposes because it's really all just about power. So it's not so much it's more of a tool than anything. And so I would agree with you. There's absolutely this through line, but it's I think that if you were to simplify it, it is that being versus becoming. The people who believe that they are not God, they are not the architects of reality, and the people who believe that they are. And they're going to mold man. Yeah, we are clay.
It's funny because so many times, like I'm just a sci-fi fan just because I like
Yeah,
stories.
I love
so often it ties in, and I'm looking at noosphere
Yeah.
sphere.
The mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's based on Teilhard de Chardin. I
Yeah.
didn't understand that.
Pierre,
I'm reading.
mhm.
Say again.
It's
Pierre.
Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Yeah. So I'm reading this. I'm on the end of the 4th volume. It's Hyperion and Endymion. I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
heard of it.
I've
It's
heard.
really good.
Oh, okay.
Really good. Dan Simmons. And it has man is spread out in the universe, and AI went totally autonomous,
Mhm.
really controlled everything. It was called the core.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're at odds with humanity. Humanity was like trying to break away from the grip, wasn't even really aware of how the core was operating and how integral it was to the systems. And I mean, it's really good if you've got time for like 4 giant books.
Oh.
But it's based on this guy's philosophy, who I'd never heard of, and he's a Catholic priest, and it's
Yeah.
totally, it's about we're all little gods or whatever, something like that is his philosophy.
It is.
But
He's kind of the
yeah,
father of the New Age. Yeah, absolutely.
I had no
Chardin.
idea.
And Chardin studied under Leroy, who is a French philosopher, and he and Vernadsky. So Vernadsky is very popular in Russia, but both of them have the same concept under Leroy of this noosphere. Vernadsky talked about it being, anti-entropy and being an open system, whereas for Chardin, it was a closed system. But people will argue that one is superior to the other. I would argue a noosphere is a noosphere.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're still the effects are going to be very, very similar, and especially once you're talking about using technology to create a noosphere, which is what they are trying to do. They can talk about there's
That's
all
what the metaverse would be, no?
the
Or
collective
beyond.
intelligence, the
Yeah.
metaverse. I mean, but when you think about like Web3, 6G technology, and you start to think about these cyborgs, it's really, what did Curtis Yarvin say? The most horrific quote I think I've ever read. He talks about a humane alternative to genocide would be to virtualize humans, not to liquidate the wards, but to virtualize humans. That is the humane alternative to genocide. So he
And what does that? What is upload the consciousness, or just plug them in, like jack them in physically?
plug them in, so they think that they're having this, blissful life, but they're essentially like a vegetable somewhere.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
lot of sci-fi movies about that.
Oh, I know. And this is where, so this kind of like blur between reality and, the cyber world. That's why I say it's cyber physical. Everything's integrated. And part of 6G is using things like technologies like smart dust. So when you start to think about like the integration of nanotechnology and where this could go, and really this cyber kind of silicon life merging with organic life, and they already are doing that.
So I was thinking that like nanotechnology would have to physically alter humanity itself to get past human nature.
Uh-huh.
But the way they don't have to give you RFID, you just carry your phone around with you all the time. Like they got us to just opt in. And that's what it would be. You will just opt into jack in, and you won't have to. It will change you because you will just allow yourself to
I think
distort yourself into that one thing that's plugged into that, and you'll let everything else atrophy.
I think that's part of how they're transitioning us currently. They're using the cybernetic feedback loops to transition us. They've already altered our neurochemistry in that regard, and our interpersonal relationships in that regard. But I actually think it will advance. I mean, the 4th industrial revolution will bring about, some of the experts claim we're already moving into the 5th industrial revolution, but you're going to see an agentic world. Agentic is where you have these digital twins. They're already doing this. Instacart is working with ChatGPT to do your shopping for you. They will make your shopping list and actually do the purchase. So they call it agentic shopping. Yeah,
because they look at your fridge.
Mm-hmm. They look at your fridge, or
like the recipe that you're reading, because you can do that right now. You can look at a recipe and it'll say like, "Do you want me to go shopping for you right now?"
Exactly. So this is where I mean, we're just seeing the very beginning of this. And right now they already have the robots. I mean, people hear about Optimus because Elon's such a popular figure, but there are many companies, and honestly, Optimus is the least human They have a company called Robotics, and I'm sure they're not the only one. They're just one that I've studied, that really they use very human-like skin. Now, understand, they have silicone skin that sweats. That's how human-like it is. And they can make
Wow.
these robots are being trained for hospitality positions and therapeutic positions. So
Oh,
they're
those are the two things that I thought you needed humans for.
exactly. So we are moving into a world, and right now the barrier of entry is cost. These robots are very expensive, but the robots will come down in price. They will become much more prevalent. Yes.
That's what I think a lot of this Trump wheeling and dealing with trade and corporations and stuff. And he said, and like law firm, like he's just saying, you're going to do work for free. You're going to give me $500 billion. We're going to match it with funds. We're going to, I don't know about the sovereign wealth fund or whatever. He's funneling money into these extra
Regulating,
congressional projects.
yeah, and deregulating AI. And I do think we should be on the lookout. They're really going to be pushing for this next gen nuclear technology.
Oh my gosh, you were speaking of companies you've never even heard of. There was one, I don't know how I stumbled upon it. It was just a side thing that's already had $30 billion worth of investment, but it requires a massive change in policy. And I'm like, and I think Bill Gates was invested in it or whatever. I'm thinking nobody's investing in something like that without knowing that that policy is effing changing. It's
Yeah.
going to change. And yeah.
So when you're talking about like how they're going to change us, I mean, I think that part of, so we have a whole chapter. I was going to tell you, chapter 9 is on scientific dictatorship. So we do talk about like the, you know, like Goodek and how that was in the 1800s, and he coins the term scientific dictatorship. And we go through that, but we also do have a whole chapter. Chapter 3 is on new regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies. And this is just, you know, I know people are familiar because Trump signed the, you know, Genius Act, and then not far behind is the Stable Act and the Clarity Act. But the thing about that is when you start to think about, and this is where 6G does get relevant, and Web3 technologies are very relevant because they want to tokenize everything. And people keep thinking about the 17 sustainable goals in terms of like the Gaia stuff. And yes, they want energy credits and they're using carbon credits as the justification for it, but it's really about social impact finance. So they're commodifying us, and it is social credit. We will have, they do want, I don't want to say they will. I mean, I hope people push back against this. That's why we wrote the book, is so people can be aware and then push back. But they do keep talking about UBI. They want a UBI. And there will be a conditionally based income, not a higher universal income that Elon Musk keeps talking about. People need to remember that Elon Musk's grandfather, Josh Hedelman, I know a lot of people know that he was head of Technocracy Inc. from 1936 to 1941. But right after that, when he got kicked out, he started the Social Credit Party. It was literally called the Social Credit Party. So people are like, you know, they're just, they seem to overlook that when Elon's talking about his higher basic income. It's like, it's a social credit system. It is a conditionally based income. But when everything's tokenized, and Larry Fink's already talking about this, Ludnick's already talking about tokenizing everything, and it's asset-based tokenization. So we will literally own nothing. And then, as I love to say, I don't know about the be happy part, unless we come to servitude and Huxley's Brave New World, then maybe. But I don't think we're going to be too happy about it. But they are literally transitioning us where we own nothing. And they have all the assets. And we have tokens in a gamified society. So like the Black Mirror episode where they're on their bikes powering the grid. I think that's not too far-fetched from what they're literally looking to.
What is the chance in your mind that it doesn't, that doesn't happen?
So I don't know, because one, I don't see a lot of people really pushing back. I don't see a lot of people having an understanding. Most of the people who are pushing back don't have the metaphysical framework. They're coming from like a libertarian freedom, like I am my own God kind of perspective.
Yeah, they're offended by it, but they don't really know why.
Yeah, they're just like, well, no, I make up my own rules. I have freedom, and you know, if we enter a contract, that's the rule. And I'm like, you're not understanding the bulwark is that metaphysical framework. So you can't just ignore it. And so, you know, and a lot of them are building these alternative kind of technologies, which, you know, I'm not, I don't want to discourage them from doing so. Ingenuity is always, you know, that's the backbone of this country and small business. And it's what it means to be human, is to be creative and, you know, to use your ingenuity. But I think a lot of them don't recognize how those technologies will be used against them. They seem to think that there is like digital currency is digital currency. I mean, it can still be hacked, it can still be controlled, and you can have this regulatory infrastructure that controls people. So, the chance of it not being programmable, conditional, trackable, traceable is very, very slim. Even if you just do it within communities, which I think is actually where they want to go. They want to go with like smart villages, with network states. Curtis
Yeah,
Jackson
that's
had
for
his own-
sure.
Yeah, Urbit, which which Peter Thiel funded through his company Tlon. He funded
Curtis Yarvin.
sorry, Curtis Yarvin's company called Urbit, and it is a network state. Peter Thiel has his Prospera down in Roatan, Honduras, and the subsidiary of that used to be called Vitalia, a city where death is optional. It's a total transhuman experiment, but now they call it Infinita. I know.
They call it what?
Infinita. So like
Cute.
infinite, yeah, like infinite life, I guess. It's a city where death is optional. And yeah, this is all done
Oh
under
my gosh, that's in the Hyperion book.
I bet it is. Yeah. And it's all done under the same premise as Trump's freedom cities, right? It's these special economic zones, which in the South they call the Zeds. I don't remember why. It's because the Spanish word begins with a Z. But yeah, but it basically means special economic zones, which Trump
And of
calls.
course, Z means zero in British.
Yeah, but it's ZEDE. So
I
don't
know, but I'm just saying.
acronym, but it's the same thing. It's the freedom cities are the same as like the smart city, just like Jordan Hall's Civium project. It's all the same, but again, it's different marketing for different audiences. So it's just different simulacra of poisonous ice cream. Pick your flavor, and either way, you're going to swallow the poison, and you'll be part of building this beast system. So to answer your question about whether or not, I don't know. I mean, if you look at it from a biblical framework, it does look like the beast system is pretty inevitable. My hope is that people will say, well, there's nothing we can do. This is what the plan is, whether it's God's plan or their plan, the evil elites or whatever. But I believe we have free will. So it is incumbent upon us to exercise our free will and to push back and to exercise our liberty. And I think we really can do that very much locally. That's not to say we ignore the complete, the larger infrastructure. But I think we have a lot of power locally. You have power over your own behavior, your own action. You have a lot of power over your children, your families, what you instill and inculcate in them, what privileges you give them. I mean, do you give your 5-year-old access to AI? Maybe not. To me, the best example of this is in 2020 when you saw, all these parents were now witnessing what their children were learning on Zoom, and a lot of them were horrified. And the mama bears came out of the woodworks and started attending school board meetings, and a lot of them made a difference. We actually saw people make a difference. I'm not saying it changed everything. There's still many problems, but they moved the needle. There's something changed. And this can be done on so many levels. Farmers can start to get together with local farmers who are like-minded and say, we do not want any climate smart commodity projects allowed in this area. Create a sanctuary zone. Why are the only sanctuary zones ever created like Chaz and Chop? Why do people who, champion liberty and true free will and want to defend our inalienable rights, why don't they ever say, no, we're creating a sanctuary zone where AI is not allowed to, dictate our farming, our education, our medical practices? People can get involved, get in touch with your local sheriff, and start, making regulations. They can get involved in their local municipalities and make bills that prohibit some of these encroachments, these technocratic encroachments. I know this is not sexy. People want to check a box.
No, I agree. Process is super important, and we still have it, and we should use it while we still have it. So when I lived in during lockdown, there was a thing, a 5G shot clock. So Trump took office, whatever, and the Trump administration said the town has 90 days to approve 5G, and saying no is not an answer. And they were putting this stuff like on schools, and our town didn't want to do it. but
Right.
they just capitulated immediately. And I think it was during lockdown, and there was no, but you know, what would have happened? Would the feds have marched into our town? Like, I really don't know. And that's why using the purse strings and getting everybody to like send all their tax dollars to the federal government and then ask for it back is insane. I just cannot, you know, and then they have that against you. Like,
Yeah.
well, we are totally entitled to send troops in to collect the taxes. You
Right.
know, we'll send guys to your house with guns, but you can't, you have no way of getting, huh?
Project Argyle.
Oh, what is that? I remember that.
Where they were training the IRS like with guns and yeah. So that they
Oh
could
my
like,
goodness.
yeah. I'm like, why does the IRS need defense training? This is a little odd.
Yeah, yeah. That wasn't that long ago, as I
No, it wasn't.
recall.
It was like 2016 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Jeez.
But
Well, I mean, you're right about that. Like I do agree that process, like people make fun of lawyers and stuff. Like lawyers were the ones who could have helped. And actually, like Anthony Raimondo did help during lockdown. He said, you can't shut my business down without a court order. And the courts are shut down. I'm happy to file this request for a court order. And you need to give me a court order that's specific, that these are the rules of that. And they stayed open. Like, that's how simple it was. And I remember at the time saying, where are all the lawyers?
yes.
And I just didn't know about him, or I would have shamed other people into helping like that because it was so simple. I probably could have done it.
Yeah, yeah. So simple. And yeah, the lawyers really could, but instead the lawyers are busy making these monstrous bills that take away all of our liberties and all of our freedoms, and also misrepresenting things like mandates, which are not laws. They're not laws, right? People did not need to capitulate to mandates. They are not laws. So yeah, we've just strayed so far from understanding what we actually have. And I keep hearing America 1.0 is dead and the constitutional experiment's over. And I'm like, you haven't even defended it.
I should say, yeah, you said the Constitution dropped the stuff in the Declaration of Independence, but I learned from John Coleman that foundational documents are foundational documents. They're integrated.
Yes, that's exactly. So I didn't say they dropped it. I said they didn't continue it in writing because at the time it was understood that the Declaration of Independence undergirded the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You couldn't have it without that understanding. That metaphysical realism was baked into them writing that. The problem is that because it wasn't continued in the literal text, the document, you know, in the words of the text, our education system has eradicated it from our understanding.
Not because they eradicated because they wanted to eradicate it. And it's not in there. Yeah. But I mean, if it had served their purposes, they wouldn't have. You know what I mean? They would have recognized it. But why did I not even consider it as a foundational document that it had it had a I wouldn't say the force of law, but really, yes, the force of law, like the philosophical underpinnings of the law is there. And I was not taught that.
No, of course. And most of us weren't. I mean, there's a reason, like most people, when they think of the Enlightenment, they assume that it's a monolith of thought, which couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I would argue there's like the Enlightenment, there's the Council Enlightenment, there's the British Enlightenment, the Scottish Enlightenment, and then there's the Scottish common sense realists who were trying to revive the.
It was more like discourse. It was more like a process of discourse.
Yes, but the Scottish common sense realism, where that school was trying to revive the Aristotelian Thomistic realist metaphysics and reincorporate that and reintroduce that into our structure. And most people are never even introduced to them. Most people have never heard of them. Justice James Wilson was one of our first Supreme Court justices. He was one of 6 people. The only other person in that 6 that you probably know the name of is Ben Franklin. But he was one of 6 people to sign both the Declaration and the Constitution.
Oh, wow.
And most people have never heard of him.
Yeah. I don't even know who the 6 of them are.
Exactly. And Madison was trained under Witherspoon. Witherspoon was also at Princeton. He was also a Scottish common sense realist. So George Mason was not influenced because he was in the South, but he was an Aristotelian. So he was very influential on Jefferson in creating that the language that led to the inalienable rights, self-evident truths, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, this comes from Aristotelian, Cicero, this kind of line of metaphysical realism. And they were arguing against the Lockean and Humean construct that were pure radical empiricists outside of a realist metaphysic. And so people don't think about that because it was not baked into our education system. What we got was this downstream Kantian stream of thought. And I wrote an article pretty early in my Substack on how Kant was very influential in spawning the libertarian movement. And it is this self-authoritarian kind of concept that comes from Kant. And this is not a realist metaphysics. It's self-apotheosis and constructivism. And I love the spirit of a lot of libertarians. It's not that, I mean, they're very like rah, freedom. And a lot of them are great entrepreneurs and very creative and passionate people.
And self-sufficient and autonomous. These are things we need. People who know how to do stuff, people who think in that individualistic manner. It's really important.
So I'm not criticizing them as individuals.
But yes, it's very interesting because my father always taught me, understand your principles, and then any decision that comes your way will be very easy to make. He said, it won't take you forever. You won't have to sleep on it. You won't have to ask people what to think about it. Yeah. And I've noticed that it's true in that regard in behavior, but it's also true in political tenets. So I was already an anarcho-capitalist when I got this radio show on a conservative station. I'm like, nobody's going to want to listen to me. Although there were an amazing number of libertarians who did like it. And it was within earshot of Auburn, Alabama, which is where the Mises Institute was. So there was actually a lot there that I didn't realize. But my point was just, okay, I'm going to, and to this day, this is what I try to do. I'm going to look at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and my principles of right and wrong, and tell you why what you are supporting does or does not comport with that. Like when people are saying like Assad has to go, like based on what do you have the right to depose a sovereign, the head of a sovereign country, regardless of whether you like how he took that power or not? Like you don't have that right. So I always look to those touchstones of principle, and I was really, really surprised when the transition between Obama, where everybody would act like they understood those touchstones of principle, and they would say Trump, and they would say, well, it's not really important because he's going to affect a change I want. And I'm like, don't you understand that that's just the beginning of the end? When you take out the cornerstone, like that's the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the, like, I mean, really, we've been circling the drain for a long time, but that was the beginning of the end of people, I'm going to say on the right, understanding the foundational principles that Ron Paul was resuscitating. For better, whether people want to say that he's like a limited hangout, if that's the kind of limited hangout that we were ripe for, great.
Yeah, no, Ron Paul is not a typical libertarian. He was much more of a constitutionalist. He was, I don't see him as very much aligned in terms of philosophically with a lot of libertarianism.
Well, then I don't like the word libertarian because, Ayn Rand to me was a CIA agent. Like, Ayn Rand, people call that libertarian, and even Milton Friedman was a monetarist. Like, I know that's not libertarian to me. Nope. Like, but I don't, I just don't know what the word really even means anymore.
Yeah, well, but I would argue that really it's never been consistent with the school of natural law theory. It has always diverged from that. They uphold the rhetoric. Whether they did that, strategically or unwittingly, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. I think they did it really because they were coming from a Lockean tradition, but Locke had already severed the realist metaphysics. So I think, but he upheld a lot of that language. So he talked about natural law, but he didn't, but it was hollowed out. So this was I had written an article recently on my Substack about Jim Rudd. I called him the technocratic philosopher. And my whole argument, he wrote a series of articles on metaphysics, but he essentially said that metaphysics, he hollows it out. He essentially just says it's a scaffolding as a conduit for science so that they can have the freedom to, basically pursue their complexity science. And complexity science is rooted in nominalism. It's not founded on realist metaphysics. And so my argument was that it's very dangerous, and I understand why he's doing it. Now, I point out, I don't know, I can't prove this. I don't know if he's some sort of an asset but he has a lot of ties. And So, he's got the auspices of like, I'm just a retired, armchair philosopher. But, he comes out of the Santa Fe Institute, which was tied to land and has a lot of, and tied to Rand. And, all of them were like Los Alamos scientists in origin. And it was essentially a wartime military breeding ground. That's kind of what it came out of. But all of this just to say that philosophically, when you hollow out metaphysics, it becomes the conduit. This is the same thing that Locke did, the same thing the libertarians are doing. It becomes a conduit to arrogate yourself to godlike status and rewire the structure of humanity.
Then you get that kind of pragmatism thing that you see with Trump and stuff, like, I'm just going to do this and it'll be better, and that's what you want. And you cannot have that. Like, you just can't have it, because I feel like you cannot. This is why I like Catholicism, even though I just assume that all popes are atheists. Like, the popes are bad, the Vatican's terrible, it's totally infiltrated. I'm not giving it up though, because it has this like 2,000 years of writing and law and stuff that's crystal clear. So when the Pope goes to Turkey and Turkey is terrorizing and murdering Christians and Alawites and stuff in Syria, I can call him out on that. And everybody should understand, because you have this very crystal clear set of principles and rules. Same thing with, that's why I don't abandon this country just because no president ever obeys the Bill of Rights voluntarily. But that you cannot hold. You all have to be on the same page as the body, because the body has the power. The church is the people are the people. The body has the actual power.
Popular sovereignty is the stuff, right? And that comes from Justice James Wilson. Yes.
Yeah. But in order for them to be able to spontaneously identify the issues and reject them, it's not about getting a leader to rally everybody and push back. I mean, you can do that, but like what you're saying about the local stuff, it's if every single person at once was like, what the hell? No.
Right.
And they would be if we all maintained that understanding of the foundational principles. It would repel us.
It would reverberate. And yes, it would repel. A really great, just concrete example is 5 years ago, if people just said, no, I am not going to inhale my bodily waste by covering my mouth. I mean, if everybody just said no.
I couldn't believe that people didn't. I did that. And I was walking around, I would see old people and I'd be like, you've been around. This is bullshit. Am I right? And literally one of the ladies went like this. With her arms to make sure that I was 6 feet away. I was like, are you kidding me? You are willing to, like, didn't your like father die in World War II or something? You are willing to give it all up for what? Another 6 months? Look at you.
Right, exactly.
What the hell are you talking about?
It's craziness. But I don't think if they had not passed that compliance test, I don't think they could have gotten to the experimental injection.
Well, that was the most important thing. Every one of those, and not just that, it's not just COVID contained. I mean, they realize now how far they can go. Now they can't do it right away because living memory is important. So they have to wait until you're numb, or they have to give it some time. It could be 20 years, but you thought it was 2030. So let's wrap it up. But I want to understand why you think they're on track. And make sure if I forgot anything, let's get to that too.
Okay. I do think they're on track because as I was saying, a lot of the so-called experts, not that we discussed all the experts who are on top of the Plato's divided line, but they are telling us that we are actually already in the 5th industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
You have these robots, which will become much more prevalent. And right now they are really trying to study this interface. It's called biodigital convergence for a reason. And remember that document that came out of Canada Policy Horizons in 2020, but this movement and the studies are much older than that. But that term was actually on that document. And they're trying to figure out right now it's a cybernetic interface. So the robots are working with us. It's AI, machine learning us, interacting with us. But they're starting to create these agentic digital twins who will now represent us in the cyberspace. And so I think just in next year, we're going to see a huge advancement in AI, digital twinning, the amount of data that they're collecting on us. So a part, we do have this in the book as well, but MAHA, he says, RFK Jr. said, is really about MABA, Make America Biotech Accelerate. And he said that every American—
Are you serious?
He actually used the word accelerate too in it. Yep. And he says that every American needs to be wearing a wearable. And that is all about collecting data and,
The ring.
ring.
Buy your honey a ring for
Exactly.
Christmas. The ring is the bio, right? Isn't there a ring? Yeah.
Yeah. Like the Aura ring or
Oh,
So-
2 people suggested I buy it for my husband. I was like, do you not know me? Like, what the fuck? Like, somebody like let the Alexa out of the box one year. It's like, hit that thing with the hammer right now.
Oh yeah, no. There are some wearables that don't send off information. But most people don't, like, even the ones that do, you can toggle it not to. But there are ones that aren't interoperable. So like that don't have because they're just not set up.
Yeah, but the data is stored somewhere for that moment when you get like a Doge moment where like, oh my gosh, Elon is sucking up all the IRS information. Oh my gosh, who could have seen that coming?
There is that. I'm just telling people that there are options that are less interoperable. And so, I mean, if you want one, so you can have your own data.
I mean, stuff is cool. Like it's helpful, but
what they're
nice.
doing with it is, it's part of the Internet of Wearables. And in that Path to Mass Surveillance article, I show you like I'm sure I missed some, but like the Internet of Wearables, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, the Internet of Bodies, connected to the Internet of Nanobio things. And when we see 6G, we're going to see Internet of Nanobio things is going to be much more relevant. But they have the Internet of Sensors, which is part of the wearables. So he was a huge proponent of AI precision medicine. Now, a lot of people think like, oh, he was captured and he betrayed us. No, I warned people before Trump got into office. His whole thing was about AI precision medicine because he is part of Vantage Point. I don't think he owns it anymore, but Vantage Point Technologies, like he put in something like $22 million into this company, which is all RFK Jr.
Yeah,
which
I mean,
all about emerging technologies, and that is where this is all going, is emerging technologies. So the amount of data that they're collecting on the amount of deregulation they're doing. Trump just put out some sort of a bill saying that that all these states who are trying to regulate AI, he's putting out some law that they can't, which is already in his AI action plan, by the way.
Yeah, and if that's totally unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional. It eradicates federalism.
Here's the thing. This is another example of libertarians die by the sword, but they don't live by it. The federal government is abusing its power in an unconstitutional way to accelerate something that will take our tax dollars and be used against us in the future. If your state, in the service of subsidiarity, wants to protect you from that, and you come out and say, like I always do, I hate regulation, you can't. We don't live in a libertarian society. In a libertarian society, there would be you would not have voice to text. There was never an economic reason to put that. That was such a lot of money. No way did you have such a labor shortage that it would be worth that kind of capital investment. It has to bypass economic value, either because there's a different purpose, or because you're taking the money from someone who has no choice, and the benefit accrues to somebody who didn't actually have to pay for it because it's not economically sound. But yes, you can defend yourself against unconstitutional, treasonous government.
Yes, well, but there's also the aspect of the marketplace, right? So the marketplace, if it were truly like, free market kind of rules under that auspices, maybe, but
it wouldn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It wouldn't exist because it's
no. You get what I was saying is, though, you get manipulation in the marketplace. So I mean, I think the independent media is a really great example of this, right? So it's consumer driven, but the consumer market is not interested in the reason there's no kind of funded institution for teaching metaphysical realism is because it is not profitable. This is not profitable in the marketplace, and it does not appeal to the consumer appetite. And so instead, you get these cult of personalities who are selling infotainment. Most of them are selling very salacious, kind of like gossipy, you know, and I'm not saying that it's always bad, but a lot of times it doesn't really have a very valuable purpose, but it is very marketable. So the marketplace is not always
okay, but that goes to something I've absolutely noticed,
Okay.
especially with the Trump thing, is that this idea of equality, yes, we're equal under the law, God loves us equally, whatever.
Right.
But if you go back 100 years or 150 years and you read some like old English literature, it's going to say, what are you talking about? You would give those people the vote? They're morons. Like they're only suited to like hoeing the row. And so like, yeah, metaphysics is not for everyone, and it doesn't have to be profitable, because the people who it is for, there are gentlemen scholars. Like art flourishes even without the benefit. But and I would say that actually podcasting would have been better, would have maintained its integrity if it didn't get infiltrated literally, or created by, in some area, like literally the powers that benefit from it, whether it's CIA or whatever, which is the same thing that the AI and the tech comes from. And what I was saying before about it would not exist, and this is why it would not exist, and this is where the economics comes in handy, is that you don't make capital investments in anything that where labor is a better value. And at a certain point, for anything, any labor saving device or whatever, your labor prices would have to be pretty high to spend on really high cost capital stuff. So we never have that problem. And what created that problem was COVID. They actually created a labor shortage.
Mhm.
And that fostered the tech. So I'm just saying, it's very artificial. You would never ever have this problem. Probably wouldn't have a problem with genetic engineering or anything else if in a non-subsidized, non-controlled
I
market.
would slightly disagree. I would say
Okay.
it advanced it, definitely. It definitely accelerated it, to use their word. And I think that's very, very true. And it created an artificial scarcity, right, of like
Of
labor.
labor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's accurate. But I don't think that it's true that it wouldn't have happened otherwise, because this technology, it's still there. They appeal to convenience, and they
No, but
appeal.
those technologies all were subsidized by the military. Like they all came out of DARPA and everything else. And all if you're taking all government money out
Mhm,
from the beginning,
mhm.
even like on just war type defense, like the prosthetics and stuff, like that's all a way they use war to develop tech for consumer
Sure.
purposes.
There's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of independent people
Give me one example.
who are creating technologies that are well.
No, I know, but they're on the shoulders. They're marginal. They're edge people. They're the ones who have benefited from trillions of dollars of investment that would not pass the cost benefit analysis in the private market.
I don't think everybody in Silicon Valley is like
No,
sponsored by the military.
no, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. But
Okay.
the fundamental foundational technologies that were created
Mhm.
for these people to have value added on the edge, yes, you
Mhm.
create it, and
Right.
then everybody can build on it. But your like voice to text or like video streaming and stuff like that stuff, satellites, those things would absolutely would
Well,
not have emerged.
the
What?
video streaming.
Yeah.
That's a really great example. Totally. And I mean, I don't know. I actually I know him. I've talked to him. I know the guy who created the company that launched that. And you could argue maybe he's independent, maybe not, maybe yeah. But so that's the case where, let's say hypothetically, that he's completely independent, came up with just from the product his own brain.
Invented satellites and shot them up there.
I was going to say just the streaming technology.
No, you can't start there.
The video. Oh, you're saying that because that's on the heels.
You can't start there because who put the satellite up there?
Okay, so you're saying like he wouldn't have been able to do that. So you're saying it's downstream.
Who developed the satellite? Yeah, who developed the satellite technology? Like all the stuff, the big stuff that comes out of war spending and is intentionally Like
Right.
wars are intentionally
Oh, yeah, sure.
for that.
I don't disagree with any of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I know it sounds like I'm just like making stuff up, but I'm saying like the stuff that they, because I'm older than you. I remember growing up and they're saying you'll never get voice to text, you'll never get streaming because it will never ever make economic sense to make that capital investment. But when you have infusions of technology that really you don't have to pay what it actually costs, it's like what I say about trade from China. You would not have frozen shrimp from Thailand at $11 a pound
Right.
if you didn't have the wars for oil and the US Navy policing the Pacific Ocean. You
Right.
just wouldn't have it.
Right.
And so that's what I'm saying is that the whole system was built for this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so you wouldn't, so you could be a libertarian if you
right.
lived in a libertarian society, but you don't. You live in a highly controlled society where your tax money is being stolen at the point of a gun to create the cage that you live in. So if your local government wants to prevent that cage from locking, I'm not going to fall on my sword for that.
Still don't think you could live in a libertarian society. And a really great example is like a lot of these network states are predicated on being a libertarian society, right? That's what they're predicated on. However, it's an isolated ecosystem, right? You're still going to need some sort of digital ID to enter.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. A libertarian society is based on the human being, human nature, on the ability to live like air, water, things are not scarce. See, scarcity is where you start having a problem. So if your necessities are not libertarianism, humanity, freedom, liberty all depend on the necessities not being fundamentally scarce. So there's no such thing as a natural monopoly. There's no such thing as a natural monopoly. There's a substitute for everything you really need.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the foundation of libertarianism. And once you're in a walled garden where you need to buy the stuff you need to live, you can't assert your right to autonomy.
Sorry, are you saying that that's the foundation of libertarianism or liberty? Because libertarianism, as I just said, is not natural
right.
law.
So
it's
right.
not,
So
okay.
I will say libertarianism, it's like a really tough word, but yes, like the assertion that human beings are capable of liberty in a real sense depends on the fact that we don't. That's why the most important question is, how do you claim ownership of land and property, water, whatever. That's also like why it's so important to have a rule against perpetuities. Like dead people cannot control land forever because it's a necessity. And it's not scarce. Like we have enough land, water, air for everyone to live. We have enough for clothing. We have enough for everything.
Yes.
And in a free market, you could always trade for those necessities and live. And everything gets built on top of that. But once you're in a society where the fundamentals, you have to have a digital ID to access the net node, or you're never getting your water tube or whatever, then you can't have. That's what I'm saying. Like, I was just saying, I would like to say that anytime you can pick liberty, pick liberty. So if Trump's against, because that's what people will say, he's against regulation. That's good. I want deregulation. But in my heart of hearts, I don't always want deregulation if I'm in a society where what you're regulating is the abuse of your rights.
Exactly. That's why the natural law principles come into play. Right? The whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government from infringing on our inalienable rights. It was not to give them rights, not for them to give us rights, right? So when you
the Bill of Rights is the regulation of the government.
Exactly. And so when you start talking about deregulating things that are going to regulate us,
yes,
okay, now you're infringing on our inalienable rights. You're treating us as these like automatons to be manipulated and cogs in a technocratic machine. That is not what humans are. That's not what we're designed to be. So that's it. So you've now taken out of the structure of the natural law of the universe, of the world, right? The nature's God. So yeah, that's where it becomes incompatible.
I try to think about like how you could be so just it's not just smart, but it's like very well versed in what you're talking about. Like it's really integrated in your mind. I attribute that in some respects to like, you don't drink or do drugs, which is good for you. You probably get a lot of sleep, you get exercise, like you're operating at 100%. But
About that.
I just, it's just hard to get your mind around, and I think women probably have this worse where like I used to have people come to meetups and say, I just want to make sure that you are actually the person saying, like, I hear you on the radio, but I'm wondering if someone's just like whispering in your ear. It's very hard to believe like chicks can be that smart. Yeah. So like I would go have to prove to them that like, smart chick tricks or whatever. So, but now I realize like I've had professors who, are smart like you are. And I feel like that's a way to understand what you're saying. Like you're like a philosophy professor.
Oh,
Do you recognize that?
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of myself that way, but
Yeah, that's what you are. And that makes it make sense because it doesn't really make sense to me that you can just, you could have really understand this so well that you can always fit the different pieces because you really understand it so well that like when some new idea comes in your mind, you see where it fits. It's a privilege to be able to pick that brain of yours. I love it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Well,
very cool.
I think people need to. So it's one of my concerns with AI because people are outsourcing their cognition to AI. Now, I'm not opposed to people using it as a tool, and people will argue with me about this. I think actually on one of the Union Unwanted we were on, maybe together, somebody's like, no, if you're using it as a tool, you're just dumbing yourself down. And like, I don't even know.
No, I use it to summarize and stuff, but my daughter was like, no, kids are using it to write their papers. Yeah. Like, I just didn't have that in my head. She's like, yes, they can't think. She hates it. And she's in college. She's like, hate it, hate it, hate it.
So I will talk to AI and I argue with it. So
it's wrong a lot, actually.
It's so wrong. And I'm like, no. And it doesn't understand polysemy. So it takes things very literally. So like polysemy is like a one word that can have dual meanings, understand that. So it's taking it literally. So like what I was explaining about Locke, he'll couch things in the language of natural law, but he's already hollowed it out. The metaphysical framework is already been eviscerated. So he's not talking about natural law. He's just using the rhetoric. And so that's very confusing. And then you'll type things into AI and it sees that word.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it doesn't understand that something is shrouded in veilcraft. And so, but if you have your faculties and you are using it to interface, but you don't outsource that, then you can leverage it. It can become a tool. But I'm very concerned about the future generation because when you're talking about like being able to integrate things, so a lot of that is it is interdisciplinary. It's memory. Memory is way more important than people think it is because people think that like, oh, well, I can just look something up. I don't have to remember it. But the reason memory is such a large part of IQ, not that it's everything, but it's because it's a building block. It's a foundational building block. So it's part of pattern recognition, right?
Well, that's what I was saying about you. You've got your image there. And if you see a new piece of the puzzle, you know where it fits in, but that's because you know it all. And you're accessing actual facts and figures as you go. And that shows that's not only helpful to me, but it shows that you have a cohesive understanding. And then you can actually argue from that point of view, because if I see that you put the piece in the wrong place,
right,
I can argue with you and you can say, no, that's not what I meant. Or, oh yeah, maybe I got to rotate that a little bit, but it's how you do it. And also the process of it. I used to think this with radio, like, I used to get really nervous about these shows and I would prepare for days for one show. And I would say, okay, I don't have time for any more in. Now I've got to worry about out. Right. So I would absorb. As that's all the information I have. Now I have to synthesize it, understand it, think about it, and then explain it to somebody in a way they can understand it. Because if I can't do that, then I don't understand it.
Yes.
And that's what a paper is and everything. So you have to have that synthesis and you have to have out. You have to have expression because then you can't lie to yourself about whether you really understand it.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that so much of the technology today is robbing people of learning that and developing that skill. Not
Absolutely.
everybody's going to get to the same place. I understand, like some people have more interdisciplinary kind of brains, and that's how they are. I'm not a linear thinker, and in some ways that's not it's not to my advantage, but in other ways it is. I'm able to
Right.
take things and figure out, like, like a puzzle, and make a big mosaic out of it. That is one of my strengths. But I think a lot of people aren't even being able to develop that because they're just being given tools and they're not having to develop that kind of
Well,
integrative.
we're getting back to that structure of society I was saying earlier about like the 18th or 19th century England, where, serfs and slaves, and whether they're enslaved or not, you don't need them anymore. So when I see, useless eaters abound, when I see these commercials of the guy who's like hungover and late for work, and he was supposed to do a presentation or whatever, and he's sitting in the conference room and he's having AI do it for him in real time, and then like high-fiving the guy next to him because he hasn't. I'm like, dude, can you not see past the nose on your face? Like, who do you think is going to be sitting in your chair tomorrow? Nobody. Nobody, because you're what?
We're optimists.
Yeah, you're gonna. Yes, it's gonna be just like a bot head, Max Headroom or whatever. Yes, obviously your boss is gonna take him 1 second to realize, even if he doesn't recognize that it's AI, but that AI can do your job, and that's why they told you to be a coder for the past 10 years, and that's why there are no more coding jobs, because it's over. And yeah.
AI is actually doing coding now.
Right. Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna agree with you on the how exponential AI, when I was talking to that guy from Silicon Valley, like it's just a trajectory straight up. Like they like buckle up for the next couple of years. And I actually was wondering if they would need an implementation crisis like COVID, of a totally different nature, though. Maybe the war in Venezuela. I don't know what they're going to do, but in order to level up, step up to where it's going to be, you have to get people to do it, and I don't think they're going to wait for the gradualism. And they know after COVID that they don't have to. They can just give us a crisis, chase everybody into their house, turn out the lights for an hour, and when the lights come back on, the world's a little bit different. A lot different, and then you can bitch about it, and then it'll back off a little bit. Like that's what's happening. That's what happens.
It is
where we're at.
Yeah, and it's very possible that Venezuela will trigger it. I know there's this whole movement. I started to write an article on it. The FSP, the Foro San Paulo. It's a communist movement down there, but there's also some dialectical operations going on there, because they're aligned with Helga Zepp's. Helga Zepp's Promethean Action Institute. And Helga is LaRouche's wife, actually. And so she has kind of gone pro-Trump, but she's pro-BRICS and BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. And so you've got these two, and she's
anti-China.
Yep.
That ties a bow on that whole thing, doesn't it?
Just saying. Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
China, Russia. It's worth noting, I mean, I can't prove it, but I've always suspected that that LaRouche was tied to Stasi, because he hid out in right outside of Frankfurt, Germany, when he claimed that they were going to come assassinate him, which would indicate
he was definitely connected to somebody. I just couldn't figure out who.
Well, it would indicate that he thought Stasi would protect him. Why is he hiding out in outside Frankfurt, Germany? Like, when he thinks he's going to be assassinated by all these, governments. But Germany's.
Yeah, you would think he'd go to a communist place, not a fascist place. But
yeah, so I do suspect that, but I don't know. But his narratives were very aligned with anti-American,
Yeah, no, I'm against that. Like I hate what's happening to America and to the church, but I'm not abandoning the ship. That's our job to.
Yeah.
Well,
so in South America, those two forces that seem like unlikely allies are convening, and she's very pro BRICS, and then this FSP, who are communist outfit, and they are looking to expand.
Wow, that's actually terrifying.
I know.
Like what you just said is really terrifying,
I know.
because if China were to do to South America what they're doing in Africa, I mean, that would be, I think, irresistible. I don't think we would win that. And I don't want, on the other hand, I don't want us to win it, because what we are is they're fascist and we're fascist. But I almost feel like they're fascist for their own people.
Yeah, yeah.
We're fascists for some minor, elites that doesn't care at all about our values. At least they care about their own values.
Yes, so they're they're the model for the technocratic global infrastructure, right? When you read the AI World Society literature, they keep saying China is the model, and that they're not the most advanced. I mean, Singapore is a very advanced technocratic infrastructure. Estonia is a super advanced model. They have Estonia. Albania now has a AI prime minister.
Aren't these places that we kind of shaped after the wall fell? Like, didn't we go into Estonia and bring like Jeffrey Sachs or whatever?
We're definitely a huge part of it, but we're not controlling them anymore. I mean,
no, but I mean, we've seeded it.
But we've given them, they would not be where they are without our,
right.
I mean, the whole Kissinger rapprochement, back under Nixon, certainly helped to build China. Yeah. So absolutely, we were very instrumental in building them to where they are. But, this idea that we're still in control is, I think, a complete fallacy. And this idea that somehow, the East is going to be the beacons of liberty. I mean, the whole BRICS thing. The Lucius Trust, their biannual letter, they said that BRICS is the divine economy. I mean, I don't know that we need to say more.
No, let us then say this is our next conversation.
Okay. All right.
I love it. Wow, that was so edifying. I really, really enjoyed that. I did not know where that would go. I was just like, wait, that explains why Murray Rothbard was for abortion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not rooted in natural law. He doesn't.
Yeah, I was like, what?
What?
Yeah. I just couldn't understand it. I was like, who paid him to say that? But it's not. It's not.
It's
I
just
love it.
Irreconcilable inconsistencies that are embedded into their philosophy.
Well, mission accomplished. And I have to say, I assume you did it this time like you always do, but like you really think about the question that we're going to talk about. Like you spend time, like you're not just winging it. So I really appreciate it. And given how much work you do, how much pen to paper that you put out there for people, that you spend hours with me just because I want to know more about the contractual nature of libertarianism. I appreciate it. It is not, I really value your time and effort. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I feel the same about you. And I love our conversation. No, I'm serious. I mean,
it's fun, but I'm not, I'm not bringing what you're bringing.
You're what?
I'm not I don't bring the level of erudition that you bring.
You bring questions, and you certainly you bring insights. So it's a conversation,
It is, and it is super fun. It's very enjoyable, I have to say. But I really appreciate it. And please tell people how they can best support you and get your stuff. I mean, I have to say I really like that back and forth, because I was, what we were talking about, your little tiff with the guy. Because I was always like, that guy. And then, when I don't ever screen, like I talk to people who,
sure,
I would have that guy on, I don't care. But it makes people wonder, like, why is she rubbing elbows with that person? So I like seeing that you like, when the line is crossed, you're like, that's, line crossed, and I'm not going to shrink from that. And that's good, because it justifies a broad net intellectual curiosity, the benefit of the doubt, but you have to draw the line. And I thought that was super fun to I was like, big snaps to Courtenay. So anyway, so tell people how to find you and to support you.
To say something to that. So I feel like I have never misrepresented that. That's why it was kind of interesting that he took it so personally. I've never misrepresented where I stand. And in fact, he would send me little things like where he knew I didn't agree. Like, I know you don't see it this way, but here, look at this. I'm like, yeah, I'll take a look. I'm very open. I'm curious, and I am very, I recognize that I'm wrong sometimes. So, like when new information is brought forth, sometimes I can see, oh, this is what I was missing. This is why I didn't get it. So I will look at things, but I've never misrepresented where I stand. I've never been like, oh yeah, I support this, or
Yeah.
so I feel like it was but then when he took it so personally, I was like, okay, well, we need to dissect this. And for me, if you look at the whole exchange, it's about the metaphysics, and it is the one thing he will not address. And I don't know. I mean, be willful. It could be, as I said, in the exchange, it could be that that's just his intellectual lineage. He's no longer able to discern between the two. However, for me, it was the metaphysics that is important. And it is for all the reasons that we're discussing. That to me is the line. It's like, I cannot cross that line.
I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how important that was. And it really is. And it explains so much. But yeah, you don't have to impute base motives on somebody or any of that. Like, you don't have to worry about that at all. But yeah, half the time I'm just like, yeah, sure. I get where you're coming from. And I'm like, that's bullshit. But you don't do that. You do not do that. But yeah, no, I thought it had a lot of integrity, and I thought it was great. And so yeah, we've disagreed, I think, before. Although if I actually gave you a chance, you'd probably convince me on a lot of that stuff anyway. But yeah, I thought that was I thought it was very informative and had a lot of integrity.
Thank you. And that is why I continued it to that point, because I was like, this is for the reader. And I said that in there. I was like, this is
yeah, I saw that.
Reader. So but yeah, so you can support me at CourtenayTurner.com. I spell my name like Courtenay. It is pronounced Courtney, but it's spelled Courtenay, CourteNayTurner.com. And so there's many ways you can support the work I'm doing there. I have a Buy Me a Coffee. I've now called it Buy Me a Book. I actually have a lot of books I'd like to buy that are very expensive, and they cost more than the $8 coffee. So buy me a book. You can buy my book, The Final Betrayal, co-authored with Patrick Wood, who is really the living expert on technocracy, who, he is the shoulders we all rest on, to expose this. And he's been doing it for decades. But this is The Final Betrayal, A Cautionary Tale, How Technocracy Destroyed America. It is available on Amazon. If you get it on Amazon, please leave us a 5-star review, because, the algorithms aren't necessarily loving this. So definitely go to Goodreads or Amazon, leave us a 5-star review. We are a bestseller currently. We were number 1. I think we've moved to like number 3. So help push us back up to number 1. And so you can buy it there on Amazon, but we also have it on books.buy/Patrick Wood. And this is a great option for those of you who are not in the United States, because tariffs and shipping are pretty astronomical.
Yeah.
So books.buy will do the shipping for $5, which is great.
Well, I wish I knew that. My son is out of the country, and I've been wanting to send him books.
Oh, okay.
And it's just prohibitive. He's coming home on Sunday, though. Praise the Lord.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's great to know.
Books.buy/Patrick Wood. And then if you want to buy stocking stuffers and gifts, you can buy more than one book and get a discount at technocracy.news. And at the store, there is an option to buy the book. And if you buy even 2 books, you will get a discount, a big discount. So
see, I like it because you get something, you get the book, you can give it to somebody you want to wake up, and that's a contribution to you. It pushes your, like, the reviews up or whatever, like it helps with the algo. So I always think that's a really nice option. That's usually my go-to. With people like you, I will, people who really actually need the money to do the work and to eat food, I will do an annual subscription. And then I review it at the end of every year. Like, I always go back. I don't really let them, I don't just like keep it into infinity. I consider it a 1-year thing. But yeah, depending on how much you want to support. But I like the idea of the book. The chapters, by the way, are super cool. Like, I was looking at the chapter headings, and it really caught my interest. Like, one of them was, I had it up here to read the sample, but
I can read it to you.
Yeah, it was chapter 7 was like tell me what the
religion.
What is it called?
Rise of the State Religion.
Yes. So I mean, I could go on about all the things that caught my eye about this, but anyway, so I'm going to get it. And I also want a autographed copy.
Yes, we'll get you an autographed copy.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, you and I will talk about that. And then also you can subscribe to my Substack. So it is Courtenay Turner. So Courtenay Turner.substack.com. And that's where I put a lot of my articles out free, but some of them are behind paywall. But either way, it's really great if you're in a position to support the work, because I also put out all of my podcasts early access and ad free on Substack. So for my paid subscribers, I don't have control over the ads on all the other platforms. I don't really make money off of them.
I know it's so
Yeah.
annoying,
So
but
it's
I do make enough to pay my producer usually, and
great. Yeah.
so, but that's why it's nice to
fund it there.
have that option. Like if people don't like the commercials, because the commercials are super annoying, I can't stand them. So
And people complain about them all the time. Like, I have no control over it, but on Substack, you will get that option. There's no ads. I do it ad free and you get it first. So you're in the know, so to speak. And we will be launching. We've taken a bit of a pause from the show, although we've been uploading, me on other shows, and I'm mostly on shows trying to, spread the word, get the book out there. And but we will be back in the new year.
Yeah, I wouldn't believe you really contributed to this if you had been putting out as many shows as you normally do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just the amount of work you're doing, a human being could not do if you were doing as many podcasts as you had been doing.
Yeah,
so
I had to take a little bit of a pause, and I put my own book on the back burner too. I'm working on the Hegel's Dialectic and Gnostic Jacob's Ladder. And so I have the Substack article, which is a preview of it, but I have several more chapters I'm going to be adding. And that book I'm going to do very differently. Like this, we wanted to be a very affordable, short, that one's not going to be super long, but I think I'm going to do it more like, a collector's edition, like very, with the pretty art and a hardcover, more of so it'll be a little bit more expensive. But I'm also going to put out my algorithmic oracle as a book because it's when I formatted it for a book, it was already 120 pages, the Substack article. So so it's like, okay, then a lot of people are like, can I print this out? And then they were like, it's ridiculously long.
Book is written. Your book is written. Sell it as a book.
Much written. I just need to format it and publish it. That stuff takes time too. But there aren't enough hours in the day. And so, but if we can get enough support, and we are going to be launching the tallow, we're working on that. So that'll be another way that
is not in time for Christmas.
I'm hoping that by next week it will be. So we'll be in time for early, because we will have it on Amazon. So you should be able to get Christmas gifts.
I'm completely shadow banned on Twitter to the point where, so I have 20,000 followers on Twitter, over 20,000. And normally, back in the day, if I would put a tweet out there, what's your favorite Christmas movie? That would get through. And I would have not a single answer, not one, which is kind of crazy. So I'm totally shadow banned. So if you post something to me, if you want to say, oh, this stuff's available, do it on Substack and I'll repost it on Substack. But the Twitter thing is comical. Uncle Elon just, boot on the neck for the Monica Perez show. It's okay. But whatever.
Uncle Elon, our free speech savior, who is bringing the robots to replace us. And he's going to give us a higher universal income.
Please, please God, make it stop. Anyway, well, that was super, super awesome. Hang on, I want to make sure you uploaded. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for listening. That is Courtenay Turner, the incomparable. Wow. Thank God I had that extra espresso. I never would have been able to keep up. So thank you, Courtenay.
Thank you.